Mr. Montague, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mr. Montague, Mr. Davis, Mr. Miller, Mr. Main, Miss Davis,
members, want to welcome all the members to the House, meeting of the House this evening, the 26th of July. Also want to make a special mention, as usual, to those join us online by YouTube and PBC TV. And I want to also use this opportunity this evening to to wish many more healthy and happy years to the Member of Parliament from Hanover Western, because I gather today is a very special day for her. And you know, at times like these and in times like these, we want to thank God and celebrate with her for another year. So, on behalf of all of us here, we want to wish you an extremely happy birthday and a good evening for the rest of today. Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, I wish to associate myself with your good wishes and your expressions of facility. Please, members, thank you, yes. Yes, Madam Speaker, I wish to associate myself with your comments with regards to the wishes of happy birthday to our new Member of Parliament from Hanover Western, Member Davis, and of course to wish her many, many more happy birthdays. I think that we are fortunate, Madam Speaker, to have really a good and outstanding crop of great young parliamentarians. And MP Tamika Davis is certainly numbered among them. So we hope, of course, that today's session will be as fruitful for her as the others have been, if not even more so. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Culture...
Just a moment, House Leader, please. Can you lower your voices up? You're competing with the House Leader.
Madam Speaker, you do have certain powers, you know, and I wish sometimes it is used in order to ensure that the decorum of this House is maintained. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance will now make the first statement, and at a later point today in the sitting, the Minister of Culture, Gender and Entertainment, the Honourable Olivia Grange, will also make a statement. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Minister Clark.
Madam Speaker and honourable members of the House, my fellow Jamaicans, this year is a very special year for us as we celebrate 60 years of independence. It's also a special year because as a nation, we will be conducting Jamaica's 15th population housing census starting in September. This is a very important national exercise and is being led by the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, which is our national statistical office. Madam Speaker, the census is one of the most important tasks that we will be undertaking in this our Jubilee year. The results will help us to assess our progress as a nation and guide us in setting our priorities and direction for the next 60 years and beyond. In this House, we know the value of data, and our best decisions have been informed and guided by the information provided by the census over the years. But the census information, even though it's a very important tool for policymakers in helping to formulate our policies, it's more than that. It's also a critical source of information for businesses and the people of Jamaica. Critical decisions are informed by the data coming out of the census. Members of this Honourable House, the census is a big deal. Madam Speaker, the census is more than just a count of the population. It also captures information on the housing stock in the country, on key social and demographic information that informs policy. It helps us to determine where to put our schools, where to put our clinics, and where to locate other government services. The census is important for all of us as Jamaicans, and we've been conducting a census in Jamaica since 1844. In keeping with international standards and best practices, censuses are conducted every 10 years. The last census was done in 2011, but given the COVID pandemic, the preparatory work that would have been required in 2020 for a 2021 census was not possible because we are all restrained from freely associating. And so the preparation took place in 2021 for the census to take place in this year, 2022. The 2022 census will capitalize on new technology. Census takers will all be equipped with tablets. And the new technology will improve efficiency and the safety of data in collection and processing. And as I mentioned, this will be the first time that the data will be collected using tablet computers. Madam Speaker, you will be pleased to know that at the end of the census, the tablets will be transferred to the Tablets in Schools program, which is another example of government agencies working together. And there's a lot of tablets for the census. There are thousands and thousands of them. No, 38,000 applied. I'll come into that in a second. Yeah. You read it, man. You're good. Census 2022 is truly a national initiative, and a whole of government, whole of society approach must be adopted. Led by Statin, the implementation of the census is being supported by a number of ministries, departments, and agencies of government, the private sector, the media, the academic community, churches, and wider society. There are a number of data security measures that have been put in place to protect the information being collected. Additionally, all census takers are legally obligated to preserve the confidentiality of information collected during the census. Additionally, when the census is complete, the results will only be shared in an anonymized way. Under the Statistics Act, Statin is prohibited from sharing confidential information with anyone. Madam Speaker, the preparation for Census 2022 is now in very high gear. Between March and April this year, the recruitment for the census was undertaken. We had an application process which started online. Over 38,000 persons from every nook and cranny of Jamaica applied, and we had a process of an online numeracy and literacy test, and after that persons were brought in for on-site interviews and were selected according to pre-established criteria with a bias towards ensuring that persons work close to the communities in which they live. 7,525 persons, Jamaicans, have been recruited as census takers. And so far, we've had 2 rounds of census taker training in 9 parishes. The 3rd round of training began yesterday, Monday, July 25th, and will end on August 9th. Census takers are being trained in person and online and are supported by an online training platform. Members of this Honourable House should be aware that in a few weeks I intend to sign into law the 2022 Census Regulation and Order, codifying into law the conduct of the census by statute. I'm also pleased to remind this House that the census day will be on September 12, 2022. That's the day of record for the census this year. And the data collection exercise will start thereafter and conclude on the 31st of December 2022. This national exercise must be supported by all, as each and every person living in Jamaica who is normally resident in Jamaica must be counted. Madam Speaker, people of Jamaica, the census is not a political activity. It is a national activity, and it's a key piece in the puzzle of reigniting our nation for greatness. The census is for all of Jamaica. I'm looking forward to being counted in the census, Madam Speaker, and I know you are too. And indeed, all members of this House are looking forward to be counted in the census, along with your family members who are resident in Jamaica. We will be having, Madam Speaker, a launch for this year's census just after the holidays, and it will feature the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, myself, in generating even more awareness for the activities that will start beginning on the 12th of September of 2022. So, Madam Speaker, all members of this House, I'm sure when the census taker comes to your house or to your dwelling and knocks on your door, you will get up, you will stand up, and you will be counted. The success of the census is for the benefit of all Jamaicans. And, Madam Speaker, it is also a message that you count, I count, and all of us count and matter in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, let us support the census and respond to the census takers when they come to our house with Jamaican hospitality, Madam Speaker, as we all matter, we all count. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, the opposition obviously supports this exercise, but I do have a couple of questions for the Minister. First, can you indicate whether all the processes will be consistent with the recently passed Data Protection Act, which was passed, I think, last year by now the Minister of Education, but then the Minister of Technology? Secondly, what is the public education campaign to overcome the natural skepticism that people have in sharing personal information with anybody who is considered government? Third, are the census takers only collecting information from residents, or are they also going to be visiting workplaces as well? And fourth, in a case where they may go to a dwelling house and the individuals are not there, do they visit 1, 2, 3 times before deciding to move on, or do they leave a note? And if somebody's not at home at the time the census taker comes, is there a way to contact the census taker to say, you know, I work very odd hours and I'll only be home at this particular hour, etc. So that, yes, the other question I was going to ask to individuals who may be on seasonal employment programs like the farm work program, is there a process to capture those persons who may be, or your cruise ship program that you have just launched as well?
Thank you, member, for those questions. The first one on the Data Protection Act. The census will be census 2022 will be fully consistent with the recently passed Data Protection Act. With respect to the public education campaign, it has already started. There's a social media campaign, there are advertisements on radio and television, but that's going to intensify with the public launch. That will happen right after the holiday period. Now, the question on the collection process. The census takers have been selected to work in communities close to where they reside. The census takers will visit people at their place of residence. They will go during the day, and if the person is not there, they will leave a note. I'm just looking at the notes for this thing, and they will respond and return rather at the convenience of the respondents. Everyone who is normally resident in Jamaica will count in the census. So, and the definition of resident is if you are resident in Jamaica for more than 6 months of the year, you will be counted, even if you are not in Jamaica on Census Day. Census Day is just a day of record, but the collection of data happens over the next 3 months, and you'll be asked when you meet a census taker, the reference date will be September 12th. They will go back and, where were you on September 12th? As at September 12th, what was your dwelling? What was, etc. So September 12th is just a day of record. And if you are normally resident in Jamaica, for 6 months or more, you will count in the census. So I think
Just a follow-up. And if, for example, you came to somebody's home and the person, the husband, wife, or spouse wasn't there, can that individual provide the information on behalf of, or you have to physically see the person to count that person?
Hope you don't mind me when I say that's a good question. What I mean is it's a very relevant question, yes. Yes, member, a responsible member, can provide information on behalf of other members of the household. Yes, so that will make the process more efficient.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, in consultation with the leader of opposition business in the House, we had an understanding, Madam Speaker, and I hope it will please you, that I could make a verbal report on the recent cruise recruitment which started on July 8th. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to advise the House that the latest report I have on the recruitment is that 3,609 Jamaicans have been hired so far on the program. Madam Speaker, the process is continuing as the final selection is being carried through by the Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, and it is anticipated that we will have in excess of 5,000 Jamaicans employed when the process is over. There is also another call that is being made, Madam Speaker, for another round in September to November of this year. And so we will, in the process, get as close to the target as is possible. Madam Speaker, this, I think, is a very important development because in my lifetime, I don't recall at any time when on a single recruitment exercise, 3,000 odd people have been hired anytime in June. And this is a great statement, Madam Speaker, for not only the work that this government is doing in terms of the recovery, but in fact it is a confidence that the international marketplace has, and particularly companies, international companies, in the quality and the ability of the Jamaican worker, the assiduity to purpose that they show, and their general work ethic. People feel that Jamaicans have hospitality in their DNA, or rather DNA in their hospitality, as the case might be, however you want to put it. But the essence of it is that Jamaican workers are sought after. But, Madam Speaker, I wanted to say something in relation to the recruitment method, because what we wanted to do, I believe we have achieved. The accommodation subsector in tourism, we recognize the recovery has been one that I call an asymmetrical recovery, because it hasn't followed a linear process. And so one of the big disruptions has been the human capital disruption. And we still have issues in relation to the return of a number of workers to the industry in general. I think that's one of the reasons the crews are making this global call, because they lost 90,000 workers, the crews, 90,000 that didn't come back. And then, of course, the airlines have lost pilots, and you know the story with that, because pilots lost their effective functionality as a result of not being in the air for the number of hours that they should. So they would have to go through a whole retraining process. So several of the carriers weren't able to resume routes. And even now we're having serious problems at airports with the inability to meet the customer demand at airports. And recently in Heathrow, British Airways was actually saying, don't sell any more tickets, because we don't have the capacity to move the people. So it has been a problem. And as a result, Madam Speaker, we decided that the recruitment for cruise lines should only happen on the south coast, not on the north coast where the hotels are, in a way to protect the workers from that side of the industry. And it was very important. And Madam Speaker, I think we have succeeded in the main, and we utilized the members of Parliament from St. Thomas all the way into northern side of St. Elizabeth, and we had a smooth and effective program that today we can announce on a preliminary basis. Believe me, you have not had anything this smooth anyway, but 3,609 persons have been hired in the period, and that is significant. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Minister, if you could, is this out of 10,000 who applied? No. What was the number that applied? Right. And then secondly, it would be helpful if you could provide through your office to us as MPs the names that we submitted and those who were successful. And then secondly, I know there were one or two people, not a lot, from the list I sent who did not attend the interview for a number of different reasons, and whether consideration can be provided. You said there would be a second round at some point later on, whether consideration could be provided. The process, there were some hiccups at the stadium, but I'm not going to complain, right? Because I know what the volume of people we're dealing with, and I mean, there have been a number of people who I submitted who have indicated their own success in the process. But it would be good to understand what percentage of the total got through, and also for the next round, what are some of the things that the recruiters are looking for, and if there are things that people can be prepared for, trained in, that would be helpful as well.
I just wanted to find out, because there are a number of persons who are involved with the recruitment process. Members of Parliament, I saw where the Heart Trust people were out recruiting. I just want to know if this 3,000 odd, is it in relation to those that were submitted through the members of Parliament?
Minister, you know, I wouldn't pass up having to ask this question. The first round you denied persons on the North Coast the ability to be part of this program. And we understand the justification. The fact, however, is that there are many persons who have had experience in the cruise shipping industry who live on the North Coast and who are out of a job now. Are you and have you had discussions with those persons who are the potential employers about having some persons from the North Coast being given the opportunity to be part of this program?
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Minister, well, I would just put it a little parochial, my constituency. We went to the center, and I was told that because of COVID, there was a shortage of staff. And up until about 8 o'clock in the night, most of my persons that I sent were not interviewed because of that. And I was told that they would be back. There's a number of other constituencies that similar problems. So I'm wondering if there's any kind of ways in which you are going to be able to interview in this batch, or they will have to stay for the other batch.
So thank you very much, colleagues, for the questions. Firstly, as I said, this is your preliminary report. And the question with regards to what percentage of the 10,000, I am not able to tell you the exact number of persons who were interviewed to date. We're collating all of that. But I know that the full 10,000 did not come in, so that's why there's going to be another, in September, October. So for those MPs who submitted names, and some of those people, they will have an opportunity in the next round to be done. Because what we don't want to do is to get back in the situation where, you have any surge, because I think we've broken the back of that whole process already, and we are now in a much better position to manage it more carefully, because at least we know who the persons that are listed. The second thing is that the recruitment process was a very easy and simple one, because the recruiters were willing to deal with your medical arrangements and also to deal with whatever training is required for you. So the qualifications for it was very basic, straight literacy, numeracy, and having a perfect or a good or a clean police record. And there was a lot of emphasis on the clean police record. But just to let you know that we had in all of the process about nearly 400 rejected on medical grounds. That was the only report that I've had of any that was rejected on medical grounds. There's another issue which I was told in terms also of certain levels of literacy, in that, there are some applicants who couldn't complete the documentation properly and all sorts of little difficulties like that. But in the main, I thought it went extremely well, and I believe that we managed to keep. And to your point, I have the same problem you have, because there's nobody from my constituency that was eligible for recruitment because I'm on the North Coast. I am the MP, and I am the one who went to negotiate with the cruise lines to get this deal going, and nobody from my constituency has been able to be interviewed because I am on the North Coast, and my constituency is in that area. So if Parson is to christen anybody, he should be christening his picnic, right? And when the parson take the view that in the interest of the integrity of the process, not even his picnic can get christened, then you know that we were in for an honest, clean, and proper recruitment process. So, may it please you, Madam Speaker.
Minister, for those who were interviewed and went through, the non-rejected ones, what will be the method of informing them as to whether or not they go further from there? Is it directly to the applicants, or is it through the MPs or otherwise?
I'll have to get back to you on that, because as I said to you, I've, with his concurrence, given you a very preliminary report. I will have better details for you when that final report is done in terms of what happens now to those and how they would be informed. Because part of the reasons that they made this careful note to me, particularly about health, is that there's a level of confidentiality around that. So you wouldn't get a listing, you know, of those and for the health reasons. So work with us. We'll ensure that information flow, you know, is critical and vital, but is not given in a way that could be damaging to the persons. All right?
The difficulty with that, Minister, is just not, you know, like other programs people submit and they wait for some extended period of time. They don't know whether they are coming or going. So even to tell them that you didn't get through.
Announcements. Bills brought from the Senate. Bills brought from the Senate.
Yes, yes. The following is a message from the President of the Senate. To the Honorable House of Representatives, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 22nd day of July 2022, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Road Traffic Act 2018 was passed in the Senate with 2 amendments for which the Senate desires the concurrence of the Honorable House. And the amendments are circulated. Signed, Thomas Tavares Finson, OJCDQCJP, President of the Senate.
Minister Shaw.
Madam Speaker, I beg to confirm. I now ask that the Senate amendments to an act to amend the Road Traffic Act 2018 be now approved.
Start here, sir. Start here. Let's read from here. Read from here.
Yes, Madam Speaker. As I said, I now ask that the Senate amendments to an act to amend the Road Traffic Act 2018 be now approved.
Minister Shaw, I am first of all granting consent for you now to seek the approval of the members of the House for the amendments to be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The amendments have been approved. Members, I ask for your consent for the amendments made by the members of the Senate to be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The consent having been given, the amendments are now approved. Petitions, papers, reports from committees. Dr. Chan? Huh? Good. No. Members, may we have the recommittal of the item on the agenda, announcements. Those.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move for the recommittal of the item announcements in order to allow the clerk to make an announcement.
Question is that the item announcements be recommitted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following Ministry Paper number 48 of 2022 entitled The Caribbean Development Bank Special Development Fund Unified 10th Cycle. Ministry Papers number 49 to 55 of 2022, Social Intervention dated July 18, 2022, under the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Act for the following communities: Denham Town Community, Norwood Community, Mount Salem Community, Parade Gardens Community, Savannah Lamar Community, Greenwich Town Community, August Town Community, and the Law Reform Zone of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Orders 2022, and their resolutions for the following: the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James Zone, the Greenwich Town Zone, the Denham Town Zone, the Mount Salem Community and environs in the Parish of St. James Zone, the Savannah Lamar Zone, the Augustown Zone, and the Parade Gardens Zone. Annual report on audited financial statement of the Development Bank of Jamaica for the financial year 2019-2020. Performance audit of the management of solid waste, National Solid Waste Management Authority. Certified appropriate accounts for head 56,000A, Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology for the year 2016-2017. Head 72,000C, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development for the year 2019-2020. Head 68,000, Ministry of Transport and Mining. The auditor for 2020-2021 and the Auditor General's Department. And coming up, the report of the Joint Select Committee and its deliberation on the bill shortly entitled the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022 report will be tabled hereafter.
Notices of motion given orally. Dr. Chan.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that the next meeting of the House I'll move the following on this law reform, under the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017. 1. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Parade Gardens Zone, Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Order 2022 Resolution. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Zone of Special Operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures is Mount Salem Community and Environment in the Parish of St. James, Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Order 2022 Resolution. Number 3, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Savannah Lamar Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Order 2022 Resolution. Number 4, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Augustown Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Order 2022 Resolution. The Law Reform number 5, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Denham Town Community Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Order Resolution 2022. Number 6, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Norwood Town and Community in the Parish of St. James, Extension of Period of Operation number 4, Order Resolution 2022. Number 7, the lower form zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, Greenwich Town Zone, extension period of operation number 4, Order Resolution 2022, which were all laid on the table on July 26, 2022. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today I will move the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take these motions. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, could the House Leader indicate when the Prime Minister will answer the questions that have been tabled in my name? They are overdue for answer, and my understanding is that today is the last sitting before the summer recess. So the questions related to the cost of the campaign for the Commonwealth Secretary General.
Madam Speaker, the questions will be answered at the very next sitting of the House. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Permission to speak from a seat that is not my own. Madam Speaker, I'm trying to find out when is the next sitting of the House's Human Resources Committee. As we were promised at the last Standing Finance that a meeting should have been held in 2 weeks. It is now 4 weeks. So I'm trying to find out when is the meeting of the Human Resource Committee. Madam Speaker.
We're at.
No, Madam Speaker.
Oh.
I thought you were seeking some answers for me. Thank you.
I know.
Well, I believe it would be the House Leader or the Speaker who sets the meeting
House Leader,
agenda.
a question has been asked of you. You remember?
Madam Speaker, the chairman of the Human Resource Committee, who is the chairman of the Human Resource Committee, would make the arrangements with regards to the next meeting.
Madam Speaker, may I thank the House Leader for that. But could I also urge him to urge the chair to speedily set a meeting?
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Whereas the Right Excellent Paul Bogle, National Hero of Jamaica, was a paid-up member of the Anti-Slavery Society of Great Britain, seeking a peaceful end to slavery everywhere. And whereas, under the chairmanship of the Right Excellent George William Gordon, National Hero of Jamaica, Paul Bogle and others passed a number of resolutions at an August 12, 1865 meeting in Morant Bay in St. Thomas, calling on the British Governor of Jamaica to address their grievances. And whereas Paul Bogle then led a deputation of 6 persons who walked peacefully from Stony Gut in St. Thomas to Spanish Town in St. Catherine to seek audience to discuss those resolutions, but they were not afforded a meeting with the Governor. And whereas Jamaicans continued to be subjected to police brutality, landlessness and injustice, and Paul Bogle and approximately 100 protesters marched from Stony Gut to Morant Bay on October 7, 1865, to protest a case involving rights to land for peasants, and the march was incident-free. And whereas Paul Bogle and 19 others then wrote to the governor on October 10, 1865, saying that, "We therefore call upon Your Excellency for protection, seeing we are Her Majesty's loyal subjects," but their letter was ignored. And whereas on October 11, 1865, Paul Bogle, seeking to protest against the oppressive injustice and poverty affecting the people and the neglect of the plight of the people by the colonial government, led an uprising in St. Thomas, Jamaica, which has been called the Morant Bay Rebellion, and is also sometimes referred to as the Baptist War. And whereas Paul Bogle and his followers neither carried nor fired any guns on the 7th October or the 11th October, 1865, and whereas the colonial authorities reacted viciously to the uprising, resulting in more than 1,000 Jamaicans being killed, including hundreds who were executed, flogged or otherwise punished, and approximately 1,000 homes and many cultivations were burned or otherwise destroyed. And whereas Paul Bogle was hanged by colonial authorities at the Morant Bay Courthouse on October 24, 1865, for leading the uprising, thereby becoming a martyr whose courage and ultimate sacrifice helped to bring about social change and further the cause of justice for the Jamaican people. And whereas Paul Bogle has become an enduring source of national pride, self-belief, courage and resilience for the Jamaican people, and he was accordingly conferred with the Order of National Hero in 1969. And whereas the St. Thomas Parish Council passed a resolution on February 11, 1999, for all churches in Jamaica to come together and host a commemorative service in memory of Paul Bogle and those who lost their lives in the Morant Bay Rebellion. And whereas the resolution passed by the St. Thomas Parish Council was also supported by similar resolutions passed by the parish councils of Manchester, St. Mary, Clarendon, St. Catherine, Trelawney, Hanover, St. Elizabeth and Portland, and by the St. Thomas Ministers Fellowship, the Jamaica Baptist Union, and the Jamaica Council of Churches. And whereas the Paul Bogle Foundation also supports this motion being brought to Jamaica's House of Representatives, be it resolved that this Honourable House call on the government to declare that a national commemorative church service be held on the 24th day of October of each year, where that date falls on a Sunday, or where it does not, on the Sunday in October closest to the 24th, in recognition of the heroism and ultimate sacrifice of the Right Excellent Paul Bogle and all those who lost their lives in the uprising in St. Thomas in October 1865, known as the Morant Bay Rebellion. And be it resolved that the 24th day of October of each year be named and celebrated as a day of commemoration for the Right Excellent Paul Bogle and all those who lost their lives in the uprising in St. Thomas in October 1865, known as the Morant Bay Rebellion. And be it further resolved that people of goodwill in Jamaica and all across the world be encouraged to light a candle on that day at 6 p.m. local time, wherever they are, for all who suffered and died in the Morant Bay Rebellion, and also for all who suffered and died under slavery anywhere in the world.
Members,
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I really must say that you have to keep your voices down when anyone is on their feet speaking. I just couldn't hear half of the motion. Questions and answers to questions? No, we'll pass that. Pass that. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Madam Speaker, on the matter of public business, the report of the Joint Select Committee is a little delayed and should be in the House shortly, at which time we'll revert to that. But in the meantime, Madam Speaker, we'd like to invite, through you, the continuation of this debate on the legislation relating to the various zones of special operation motions that are on the order paper. The Minister of National Security will pilot this process. He will also deal with the matter in relation to the Firearms Act and make the appropriate requirements therefrom. Madam Speaker, it is also intended that the electricity net billing regulations bill will also be concluded today. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Dr. Chang?
I now move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take the resolutions, those of which I gave earlier.
Members, the question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to take the resolutions, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Dr. Chang, you may go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Zones of Special Operation, ZOSO, for short, continue to offer significant benefit to some of our most challenged and vulnerable communities, and the value of this intervention in the declared spaces cannot be overemphasized and is impatient of debate. Today, Madam Speaker, since the establishment of the zones legislation in 2017, we have seen 7 communities: Mount Salem, Denham Town, August Town, Greenwich Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and Salama have been declared zones of special operation at varying times, with the first 2 declarations made in 2017. It may be appropriate time to take a look at the achievements and also to look at our way going forward for this kind of operation. We have gone through the review of the legislation I hope we'll be able to bring to the House soon, which will give some new directions in how the zones should be operated. Madam Speaker, it's known that the legislation is defined in 3 phases: clear, hold, and build. And while the provisions of the law reform zones are meant to further support the security forces in the execution of duties, clearly the clear and hold phases, the build phase is of equal importance. We therefore take time, but this phase will of course take some time, as we bring together multiple ministries, departments and agencies under the whole of government approach to address different aspects of violence prevention and social intervention in some of the most violence-prone communities, vulnerable communities scattered across Jamaica, which the pair would have identified by virtue of their various activity. Madam Speaker, consistent with the requirements under the law reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act, we are once again seeking further extensions for all 7 areas currently declared as zone of special operation, which are all stated to expire on the 22nd of August 2022. Acting on the advice of the National Security Council and in accordance with the law reform, Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act, and in accordance with Section 5 of the Act, which guides the Prime Minister in Council after consultation with the Joint Command made by order, subject to a firm resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the period referred to in Section 4.3. The Mount Salem. Thank you. the Mount Salem, Denham Town, August Town, Greenwich Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and Savannah Lamar zones of special operations, special security, and community development measures to be extended for a further period of 60 days. Madam Speaker, a review of the activities with respect to the operational and community building strategy. Mount Salem and Denham Town will continue in the build phase. An examination will be taken of in particular, Mount Salem, to see what the next step will be in the development of this concept. While Greenwich Town, August Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and Savannah Lamar will continue the whole phase for this period of extension. Madam Speaker, though each of the zones continue along varying phases since the respective periods of declaration, there have been significant achievements with respect to the services deployed in the community and an overall improvement in community safety and security, which is the ultimate objective. An evaluation of whether they have reached a state of sustainability will have to be done. And I said we'll take a close look at the Mount Salem area, because that is the ultimate objective, is to not only clear hold and build, but to take the build phase to a stage where the outcomes of the activity will be sustainable under normal policing. So far, there is a major reduction in all major crimes in the space. In fact, since the respective periods of declarations, as of 23rd of July 2022, there has been no shooting reported in Parade Gardens or Norwood, and no murder reported in Parade Gardens. Similar reductions have also been experienced for Mount Salem, Denham Town, Greenwich Town, August Town, Norwood, and Savannah, which have recorded reductions of 64% and 66%, respectively, 29% and 47%, 30%, 27%, 56%, and of course 73%, 71%, and 100% in one zone, 89% and 67% respectively. Cumulatively since the respective period of declaration of July 23, all 7 communities reported 48% and 55% reduction in murder and shooting respectively. The numbers are attached to the reports. Madam Speaker, as is customary, the ministry papers have been laid in the House, and members can view the activities taking place in the committees, particularly around those in the build phase. The build phase will, of course, excite a lot of us, and most of us, because it gives visible return, but we have to begin to examine, especially somewhere like Mount Salem, and where we have been for some time, to see if we can now move into, move to normal activities, not only in the policing activity, but in the quality of the services offered to these communities. In a holistic approach, we have to look at how they have been served by the schools, where schools exist, in particular infant and primary schools. We'll examine the work of the Social Development Commission, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, and the availability of access to health care in all these communities. However, I wish to highlight some of the aspects of the achievement to date. Madam Speaker, an important provision of the Zone Act is that the mandatory establishment of a social intervention committee within 5 working days of the declaration is compulsory. This committee is charged to ensure, as far as possible, the carrying out of community development measures as outlined in the Act that will promote social and economic development in the zone through the efforts of various government agencies and civil society, and provide for the establishment of the committee to, among other things, develop a sustainable development plan for the zone. To that end, the Social Intervention Committee, primarily led by the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, as the coordinating agency, undertook a number of activities over the period of respective zones, particularly in the build phase. In fact, the Jamaica Social Investment Fund has developed a high level of institutional skill, competence, and integrity in executing build phase activity. The social investment side is still in process, and we may have to examine how we execute those more effectively to achieve the sustainability we want in that area. These included various planning engagements with members of the community. Community buy-in is of particular importance in this kind of operation. The international donor community and the private sector. Mount Salem and Denham Town have undergone 3 years of the intervention and now anchored in the build phase. They would have benefited from a greater concentration of social intervention activities of the physical kind, have been immersed in the build phase since February 2018 and March 2018 respectively. Since then, the communities have largely experienced significant improvements in infrastructure works. The social intervention framework applied to these communities, though not a one-size-fits-all approach, sought to utilize an integrated approach built on two pillars. One, crime prevention through environmental design, which focuses on urban upgrading to the physical and environmental space to reduce opportunities for crime. Two, crime prevention through social development, seeking to address the underlying human and social risk factors of crime and violence and human capital development. That is, to identify services, youth livelihood development, their skills training and enterprise creation, capacity building of governance structures, including neighborhood watches and youth recreation. As part of the wider city security plan, the JISTV as a key implementing agency has contributed significantly to achieving the target of safer spaces, which is aimed at reducing the risk factors in the physical environment by design and redesign. The overall impact of these approaches has resulted in improvement in city security, improved access to services, transportation, solid waste management, security. Reduction in response time for the police, particularly important in these areas, and security force within them. Increase in responses, increase in patrols, emergency and routine foot and vehicular, improvement in surveillance and space by residents and security forces, improvement in police-community relationship, improvement in community aesthetics, and improvement in perception of self and community. Over 80% of residents agree that there have been improvement in police responsiveness and increase in police patrols, and indeed significant improvement in the relationship at the community level. When asked about the period of investment in infrastructure and perception of self and community, approximately 90% of residents feel better about themselves, feel better about their community. They also express an increase of pride in their community. Mr. Speaker, the kind of self-perception and self you're referring to, a person moved from living in Vietnam to living on Seaview Drive. Perception is quite different for the individuals in their community. They have addresses with not for the community, street names, get running water, and are able to identify, said, a home address. And it's the beginning of restoring their self-respect and giving them a sense of identity and equity in their community. With respect to the physical environment, significant progress has been made with infrastructure development within every zone. Road infrastructure improvement is of great significance because you have to establish effective roadway and in order to bring about your identification of your address stretches. What you need. I agree, Minister, and my colleague, and I'm hoping we can begin to move in here. We did have, as members, and I said the PIOG has identified over 100 of these communities across the island, about 120. And the objective is to get this kind of program in all of them. The 2-year pandemic did put our program significantly, hit our program significantly, badly. But we are looking to begin the process again, and that's why I'm spending some time on this report, because I know we have the support of the members, but to outline again and refresh our memories as to what we're doing, and then take a look very early how we can move more aggressively in the areas we are in, and look at how we can scale up the activities elsewhere as we go forward. The Minister of Finance sits beside me, is aware, and we'll have to also examine how we can get the financing required. Road infrastructure, for example, in the case of throughout the 7 areas, I think some over 4,300 meters of roadway and pathways completed, accounting for more than 93% of the community roadways and impacting approximately 7 major roadways within the community of Mount Salem. In particular, this is the build phase. Construction and rehabilitation of some near 3-kilometer road over and 6 kilometers of sewer and water lines through Denham Town. And this is a particular challenge to Denham Town. Again, we seek a holistic approach. Denham Town is very much downtown, as we say, it's on the southern side of the carpet area. And for those who are not aware, that's where all the gullies run downtown, and a number of them actually run through West Kingston and the other Western constituencies that run there. So the member from Western St. Andrew identified. In addition to that too, the sewer runs downtown. Unlike water, sewer is actually run by what they call is gravity fed. Very rarely have a pumping station on specific areas. So all the sewer from all the way in Papine comes down, and you find that lines are varying from 15 to 20 feet underground till they get downtown up to 60 feet below the ground, so that it runs down. And when you get downtown, which is why it's not just for zones, we have to take special measures to begin in the redevelopment of downtown Kingston. The sewer runs downtown and the lines are blocked. You have sewer all of the communities downtown. And I know the member from South St. Andrew, who is part of the old city of Kingston, have the same problem. The member from West Kingston never faced remand, and correctly so, because if we are going to achieve the rehabilitation downtown, not only in terms of the social elements and restoring peace, safety, and a good community spirit, we have to fix the fundamental physical problem. And among that, to ensure not only a better environment for the community members, the whole process of economic development, where you're looking towards new office space, new industrial activity, new commercial activity, the sewer problem must be fixed. Nothing is more demeaning and belittling and literally to the human soul in a community when sewer is running through the community on the street. It's a most horrible activity, and one we have to take steps to correct. Whatever the cost is, it is really diminishing to the human spirit in these communities. Rehabilitation of the Mount Salem is almost complete, and then I'm told, as I said, near 80%, which reflects us at the build phase. It includes construction of fixing of community center, rehabilitation of the primary schools, construction of green spaces, sidewalks with fencing for protect kids walking to school, zinc fence removal, skills training was offered. That has to be deepened. We have got good response. Livelihood program and academic support, including summer camps, which is crucial at this point in time when we have lost significant amount of time out of school in various communities. And programs to address literacy, numeracy have been completed. The registration, allowing citizens to get birth registration certificate, to get registered path, and basically to ensure they are attached to the social programs that we have throughout the community, has been crucial in improving the atmosphere in these communities. Because they are relatively small areas and isolated, some of the criminals will return once we reduce the level of security. But I think the improved relationship is forcing them to maintain a lower profile and reduce violence in the community. It has been said in one of the communities that they use the zones of special operators, their gated community, because when they get to come back in there and are remaining quiet, they're sometimes overlooked and they feel safe because the police is all around. It requires good intelligence to, of course, ferret them out. While the focus for the social intervention is concentrated in the build phase, the social intervention committee undertook early initiatives concurrently in the clear, hold, and hold phases in the other 5 zones. We do not wait until we get to build totally to do the social investment. With the security element in the whole phase remain the focus during the phase, early initiatives also commence these activities. Include not only infrastructure upgrade, but of course the committee meeting to identify the issues and begin the process of engaging the citizens in a positive way and taking steps to do counseling and training of some individuals in case management and working with the community. Additionally, the private sector organization of Jamaica recently launched a Project STAR. 25th of July is their launching date. Officially was their launching date, an initiative which complements existing government efforts by the private sector to facilitate a national, collaborative, evidence-based approach to improve social outcomes at the community level, aspect of which have already been started. I mentioned this in closing, Madam Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's a very laudable project. It has the support of the PSOJ and all the private sector organizations, and on both sides of the House, as a group led by outgoing President of the PSOJ, to keep Duncan seeks to actually raise about $1.5 billion and in fact work in sync with the government programs to invest in communities that are defined along the lines of the zones of special operation. These communities, Madam Speaker, have exemplified what will guide the efforts of the state and this government to accept their role as key stakeholders in a larger society strategy to build a nation, one community at a time. And while we use the term one community at a time, we do not intend for this to take forever. We'll be intervening in the communities as identified by the Planning Institute of Jamaica, and we expect to scale up all our programs rapidly to reach these communities, restore hope to the most vulnerable and to weakness in our community. Please, Madam Speaker. Madam President. Oh, no,
any contributions from?
Madam Speaker, we support the extension of the ZOZO in the designated areas. We look forward to the amendments to the ZOZO legislation being brought here, so we no longer have to go through this particular ritual every 60 days, which takes up a significant amount of the House's time, and is going to be, I think, replaced by a 6-month, is the intention, and 6-month cycle, which makes a lot more sense. And we look forward to the other amendments to the ZOZO legislation as well that will hopefully make it a more efficacious tool in the calming of areas and the revitalization of areas that have been calmed where previously violence reigned. So we have no objection to these particular motions and resolutions being passed. Thank you.
Dr. Chang, you can conclude. Oh.
Madam Speaker, Minister, even as we continue to support, continue to support the legislation and in the designated areas, Minister, we have had these discussions and we have agreed that there are areas that, but for the constraint, resource constraint, are similarly situated and deserving of the attention with the application with ZOZO in particular. But the response has come, Minister, that there is this integrated social program to be implemented beginning this year. And I continue to ask what is the input and how can we, other members of Parliament, through outreach, seek to have some things being done in the meantime to address some critical other areas, in particular in the social component. I would love to, in your response, if you could speak to that.
Thank you, and thank the members for the support. Yeah, the challenge of scaling up is there, but I said during the course of, before the financial result, we expect to move with some more programs. I can't give you an exact deadline and the numbers, but especially for the member from Western St. Andrew, who have been particularly consistent in seeking the crime prevention unit to operate there. I'm going to invite the unit to take a look on what can be initiated. But I said the full program, I cannot give you the outline. The Minister of Finance, in all fairness, has been not only occupied is keeping his capital program going, and while we are now moving to continue to scale up these programs, yes, he has been very occupied by two major issues. One, getting his compensation package settled, which we are all aware, crucial to the entire program of government, as well as the fact that the country get hit by another major blow as the war in Ukraine has initiated and caused a level of disruption. And we have to be walking a very tight rope to avoid too deep a recession in the economy and to keep us moving in the right direction. But we are scaling up our activities. In fact, the department has been strengthened and they are now going through our programs. We have a couple of another restricted program which is absorbed the time, which is again enough for proof of concept. and that again they selected entirely by their own interrelation with the Ministry of Education and the PIOJ. It's called a 25 school program, where we are working to use the school as a gateway into the community. And that is being initiated now, and we are hoping we can use its big initial program is funded by USAID, but that's something we think we can expand with our own Jamaica funding, starting this year as well. In addition to that, we are in detailed discussion with members of the Ministry of Health to introduce a psychosocial program, because research have demonstrated that we have a significant problem in this area among our young people, and I don't think it was helped in any way, or it has been significantly aggravated by COVID. In fact, research in one area of Jamaica demonstrates that we have some 14,000 kids under 16 in need of clinical psychosocial support. And of that 14,000, some nearly 6,000 require clinical psychological support, not just counseling. And the capacity in that zone serve less than 1,000. So in the medium term, you're looking at some nearly 4,000 kids who have left on their own are like to end up in serious problems. They are the recruitment for the gangs. So we are working closely with the Ministry of Health, and we expect to get that service going. The Ministry of Health is very supportive, and we'll get the required funding in place. So all these zones, Madam Speaker, as I said, are really seeking to, the 7 is more proof of the concept, and the outcome is looking good. We have to strengthen the social investment side, and we're in the process of doing that, not only in terms of the new programs, but also scaling that up as we seek to increase the level of coordination and cooperation between the agencies to ensure that the dollars we spend in these areas will be effective. And this is particularly true of education, where there's an entire program being initiated by the government to really ensure that the weakest communities, Madam Speaker, is one of the problems we have in it. If we can see it before our eyes, we'll live it. Or our best students, from an academic and social point of view, with the resources, have the best schools. The poor students who need the more intense education have the worst schools. A teacher who was an excellent mathematician, and he told me, Madam Speaker, that if we are correcting what we are doing, the best teacher should be the weakest student, and the average teacher teach the brightest student, because the bright one only needs access and guidance, and they will learn. And usually bright at that time meant people, the students who came from homes who had satisfactory nutrition, parenting, access to computer today, then access to books, libraries, etc. While the weak students have kind of basic needs as much as nutritional needs. Then you get to uniforms, parenting, etc. Those students need special attention to prevent the kind of social impact that affects them, and we have to move to correct that, and that's what we're doing, because that is the sustainable solution that will come for these communities. And so we are working through some schools and working with the Ministry of Health to ensure we can resolve some of those early challenges, and for the medium-term results, I'm confident we will get them. Madam Speaker, I now seek the affirmed affirmation of the members of the House on the 7 resolutions of which I gave earlier, most of which I gave earlier.
Members, the question before the House are that the resolutions which were brought by the Minister, notice of which he gave earlier, be now approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. The resolutions have been approved, Dr. Chan. I'm going to invite you to go in now to the report on... No?
Okay.
The bill.
Reports on committees?
That's what I'm saying, the bill. The report, we have to report the TV. We have to report the
Madam Speaker, I now ask you to invite the Minister of Energy to conclude the debate on the electricity net billing regulations number 2022 Act. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're going to ask Member Paulwell to give his contribution as opposition spokesperson.
Madam Speaker, as you can recall, last week I did ask for some time to peruse the regulations because there were extensive regulations submitted, and in fairness, as the spokesman on energy, I really needed the time to peruse them so that I could make some remarks on them. Today, I would love to be able to speak from a podium.
Bring. You hit there, Chris.
So, Madam Speaker, these long overdue regulations are pursuant to the Electricity Act, which was passed in this House in August 2015, and which provide for the establishment of a regime for net billing. Madam Speaker, forgive me if I just remind the House where we're at, and I'm going back to 2015, because it was recognized very early in the day that you couldn't achieve competition on all aspects of electricity, especially because on the distribution and transmission side, it would have been very difficult to replicate the JPSCO's infrastructure, even though the law did made provisions for the sharing of poles. But it really, in a small society like ours, we did not and we don't envisage competition on transmission and distribution. However, where we envisage competition is in relation to the generation of electricity. And the process started before me. In fact, we have been dealing with private power providers for many years as part of the unfolding of competition. In my time, we decided to take it a step further, especially because of the opportunity that has been provided by renewable energy. And so, even before the law was passed in 2015, and this law was replacing an act of parliament from the late 19th century. So it was really quite revolutionary. But even before then, we had embarked on enhancing and furthering competition by two methods. Firstly, by facilitating the granting of license for net billing, which was to enable self-generators of electricity, both on the residential and the commercial side, to generate their own electricity and sell the excess amount to the grid, to the JPSCO grid. This was facilitated before the law. So, Minister, you might have given the appearance last week that this was innovation at its highest and revolutionary, but I should remind the House that I first granted net billing licenses from 2012, and it was based on the policy that was established then, and it was also to facilitate wheeling of electricity. Wheeling takes place where a generator, a self-generator, has various outlets, offices across the country, and so he will generate from one location and be facilitated by the grid to pass through that electric current to the other locations. And unfortunately, we have not achieved that as yet, which is a major issue that I wish to highlight in my brief presentation. So net billing has always been in place since 2012. It was facilitated by an interim arrangement by the OUR and the minister to enable us to move to fast-track this process. So in January 2015, I had granted up to 200 licenses for net billing. And by the time we got to April 2021, 860 licenses were granted. I'm not too sure where we're at today, Minister, so probably you could just expound a bit to see how many more licenses have been granted by the ministry, even without the formal passage of these regulations. Why has it taken us so long? Why we find that these processes, whether it's in establishing legislation or regulations, that these things take so long? In fact, Minister, in a report from the ministry, and I know that you were not always the minister, but in a report from the ministry, the regulations were drafted from 2017, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 5 years ago, these regulations that we're seeing, they were drafted in 2017. The wheeling regulations, which haven't come here as yet, they were also drafted at the same time. And I can tell you, before the change of government in 2016, I had seen those drafts. Wow. The law was passed in August, and the intent was to fast-track these regulations, right? I'm not saying it's your fault, but the administration has been tardy in treating with this matter of energy. And one of the reasons for this, Madam Speaker, has been the fact that there has been 5 ministers and 4 permanent secretaries in the space of time. The other point I wish to make, I'm not going to try to secure your security of tenure. But no, this is too important an issue for the country for it to be treated in this way. And Minister, I have to express my disappointment with you, because your predecessors did acknowledge the role of the Energy Council as a worthwhile body that was able to cement the kind of united approach we were adopting in relation to energy, so that we didn't have to come here on the floor and fight over issues. And your predecessor, especially the member from Eastern St. Andrew, did, the member who is not paying much attention here, and I'm paying her a credit, right, did try to work across the aisle in relation to the Energy Council, because these regulations should really have been passed through the Energy Council, because that's what it is there for, to be able to, with its eagle eye, look at the various provisions to spot issues that would contend and to resolve them there, rather than us coming here to fight and argue. And especially because they include, the council includes stakeholders who are not really in the ministry. So that is my first and major disappointment with this process. It has been too long, too cumbersome, and in my closing remarks I'll have just a few more words to say about that. In relation to the clause-by-clause regulations that have been here, again I mentioned that these provisions, most of them, 90% of them, have been in effect from 2012. and they were fashioned by the OUR, the minister was enabled to grant these licenses, and they have worked reasonably well. So in just looking at some of the regulations, I will just highlight a few. I won't go into clause 5 because the fees seem reasonable. That's the processing fees. There is a fee in relation to license, and I'm not too sure, Minister, whether or not these are annual fees, because it says it's not an awful lot of money, $1,800 per kilowatt hour. But is that a one-off fee, or is it a fee that you pay annually? That information will be important. I'm also pleased that you are now giving the JPSCO 30 days after the license has been approved, because that has been one of the contentions with the operationalizing of net billing, that it sometimes would take too long for the JPSCO to move to do the connection and to have that standard form contract in place to facilitate net billing. So I'm pleased with that. And of course, there's also a requirement that the person who gets a license must start to operate the net billing facility within 12 months, or they lose it because there will be a long line of other persons who would be prepared to do so. And the license is granted for 10 years, substantially less than the main license is granted. A private power supplier gets a license for 20 years. I believe we have to rethink these long duration for licenses, especially in an era where the technology is improving rapidly, and Jamaica is no longer the questionable location for investments, for investors to put their money, hence the need to give them 20-year safeguard. I think because of the improvements in technology, and that people can make back their money in a relatively shorter period of time, there's no need to grant 20-year licenses anymore. And that as you're only giving 10-year licenses for the net billers, why not consider now putting all licenses within that framework? Now, Madam Speaker, there is a service system charge that is incorporated in clause 9. It has been spelled out. I don't know how much this is, and I think it's important that this is not going to be a deterrent. It is suggesting that the provider of the net billing facility will have to pay JPSCO a charge for the electricity being connected to the system. It is important that that charge is not a deterrent, is not exorbitant. And I don't see any reference in the regulations as to how this is determined. And the basis of that determination and whether or not it is going to be left up to the OUR. And I would not have a problem with the OUR being the body. But I was searching for it, and I didn't find it. I did send the minister some questions, and I did not get a response from you in relation to that and some other issues. Then, Madam Speaker, the regulations permit an individual to sell via net billing up to 10 kilowatt hours to the grid, and a company up to 100 kilowatt hours. That was where we started in 2012. I would think by now you'd want to consider expanding that, especially because, again, the technology for solar panels, for example, you are able to invest less and get more energy. And I believe that it will be more reasonable to expand that beyond 10 and 100 respectively to a greater number. Because this is all, or ought to be a part of the overall aim, Minister, of enabling the government to achieve 50% of the electricity needs through renewables. And all of this, the excess capacity, will go straight to the grid to enable the distributor to transmit to other users. So that is in clause 13. So if you could provide an explanation as to why it has remained at that level. Then there's at clause 16, a net billing meter is also to be purchased from the JPSCO by the producer of the electricity. I'm not too sure the cost of this. Again, we need to be clear that we're not giving with one hand and taking back with another, because the electricity that is sold to the grid is priced at a certain rate, and in the end it might not be worthwhile for the additional investment in the facility if there isn't a net gain from it. And of course, one of the provisions is to ensure that the meter works properly and that the Bureau of Standards will be involved in it. So Madam Speaker, we really don't have a major issue with the regulations as they are. These are regulations that have been drafted long ago, and it's in keeping with a facility that has been in place long ago. But the Minister would forgive me for also mentioning in this regard, again about the time process, today's own editorial in the Gleaner, which has looked at the Electricity Act 2015. And it is the second editorial. I thought, though they were critical, they were a bit light on the government. Because, as you know, I've expressed my views to you that the 2015 law required that there be a review of the provisions of the law within 5 years. And it was my remark in 2020 that urge you and spur you to start this process of review. There are various interpretations to this, Madam Speaker, because a litigant could claim that because a review hasn't happened, and that review ought to have affected fundamental provisions in the law, that there is, in fact, an ongoing breach of the law. When the law was passed, it was anticipated that certain provisions would not outlast 5 years, that they would be subject to review, and that there would be changes to be done. And I don't practice in the courts, but I believe that if a review is mandated and it is not done, and it is in breach of the law, then a litigant could cite certain of the provisions that they would have anticipated would have been changed by now to be in breach of the statute. And so it is important, Minister, that this review be concluded as quickly as possible. And your comments really did shock me, because I thought we were going at a certain pace, which pace was to enable us to catch up on the time that had passed. But your recent comments is that we paused and that there was a body to be established to do further consideration of the way forward.
But that's not in keeping with the statute.
No, certainly not in keeping with the statute, and also not in keeping with the mandate of the Energy Council. And I don't see, Minister, why there's need at this time to pause to look at the effect of COVID and the Russian and war. I believe all of those things are palpable, and that rather than pausing, we need to expedite, we need to intensify as urgently as possible. And to get to 50% by 2030 is not an easy feat.
Stop the waffling, man.
It is a massive effort. There has been no renewable energy brought on out of a process since 2016, none whatsoever. Even those that came after came as a result of that procurement process that we did in 2014. So I beg of you, let us get back to the Joint Select Committee. Let us get back to completing that work as quickly as possible. And let us get back to dealing with some of the fundamental things, one of which the member from Western St. Andrew will constantly remind us. We need to ensure that competition is further enhanced by allowing operators in free zone enterprises to also generate SEZs, to be able to generate their own electricity to supply their tenants in their premises. So these are matters that I urge that you consider. The wheeling aspect, I anticipate that those will come very soon. And with those comments, we do support the provisions for net billing as have been tabled. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member from East Kingston and Port Royal, for your contribution. And to just when your leader is finished with you, let me know. Oh, okay. Thank you. So I want to thank you for your remarks. And before I go any further, I want to indicate to you that you know my usual style. And I was not aware that this was not passed through not only Energy Council, which unfortunately is still not fully subscribed despite Cabinet's approval, because as you know, there's a number of different areas of expertise that are invited, and NGOs, etc. But that's still not an excuse. And I have also gotten the feedback from stakeholders that were also concerned that it was tabled without their knowledge or their input. And that's definitely not my style. So again, I will make sure that it does not happen again. However, I have been having quite a bit of change in the structure of the energy division in the ministry of personnel, etc. So it could be a slip between the transition. You did raise some questions to me before, which unfortunately I wasn't able to give you the responses, but it is probably better that I give them here so that the public and the members are aware. You had asked me for the definition of a residential customer. And the regulation defines a regulation customer as a single-phase domestic user, including single-phase motors of an individual capacity of 3.73 kilowatts or less, when service is taken through one meter at a single point of entry. Further, a residential customer of the Jamaica Public Service Limited, based on the JPS's unique rate class structure, rate 10, is one who uses electricity for private household, apartments, condominium to satisfy certain needs, such as heating, example, hot water, cooling, cooking, lighting, and small appliances. And the requirements of an individual capacity of 3.73 kilowatts or less, when the total capacity is allowed up to 10 kilowatts. The response to that is a self-generator system capacity not exceeding 10 kilowatts remains for residential JPS customers only rate 10. It means that the size of the system at private residences cannot surpass 10 kilowatts. The reference to 3.73 kilowatts is specifically for the single-phase domestic user motor. The other one that you mentioned a while ago also was, what was the current system charge under Clause 9 for both residential and commercial self-generators? The current system charge under Clause 9 for both residential and commercial self-generators for up to 100 kilowatts is as follows, subject to the market conditions. Direct program, and I'll send this to you, member. Direct program cost, DPC in Jamaican dollars, which is billed monthly for the cost of the meter reading, billing, and other appropriate administrative costs, to be assessed and approved by the Office of Utility Regulations on recommendations by JPS. And this is an extract from the current JPS contract. The DPC equivalent to the system charge equals $3.15 Jamaican dollars for residential and $700 for commercial. These amounts may be amended from time to time by JPS subject to OUR approval. These are the responses on the 3.73 kilowatt. And the question is the 10 kilowatts for residential customers remains unchanged. You asked about the net billing licenses, 1,023 as of June 22nd. Okay. You asked about the meter cost. Clause 16. The meter cost is in the domain of JPS. We don't have an exact cost of that as yet. In relation to your other suggestions and the fact that we did not have dialogue before, member, I think that we can have dialogue even after today, and obviously, if necessary, make the necessary changes with amendments, because some of what you mentioned a while ago don't seem, on the face of it, to be anything untoward or too controversial. So, Madam Speaker, the net billing regulations 22 have been presented to this Honourable House and my fellow Jamaican citizens. These regulations, although delayed in coming forward, could not have been presented at a more fitting time when the world events over the past 2 years have essentially put into sharp focus the need for greater effort in moving towards sustainable and reliable energy sources. Madam Speaker, there has been a steady movement towards the development and deployment of renewable energy sources since the National Energy Policy 2019 to 2030, which established the policy framework for the transformation of Jamaica's energy sector for an over-dependence on petroleum and high customer prices. This steady progression has seen the movement of the target for renewable energy shifting from 20% to the current 50% in order to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel. Madam Speaker, in developing these regulations, the Ministry engaged in consultations in 2017-2018 with the OUR and other stakeholders. Regulations are intended to provide a legal framework for generation of electricity by self-generators, provide the parameters to ensure that the grid is not negatively affected by net billing arrangements, enable structured alignment with the integrated resource plan for distributed energy resources on the grid, facilitate energy sector investment while ensuring transparency, safety, affordability, accessibility, sustainability, continuity, reliability, and consumer protection, increase the contribution of distributed renewable energy in the energy supply mix, while allowing wide-scale participation of in the energy sector and stakeholders. In concluding, Madam Speaker, I wish to emphasize that as Jamaica considers the problems of energy supply, global warming, and our national climate goals, the passing of these regulations is critical to the government's attempt to provide opportunities for fuel diversification, development, and deployment of distributed renewable energy. In relation to your last remarks, member, in relation to concerns and the two editorials in a particular newspaper, I have taken note of it. I have a meeting with my energy division and others on the 2nd of August, which is the day after the holiday, because I'm going to use the month of August to try and make sure that when I come back in September to start the Electricity Act, the review of the Electricity Act, that I have cleared all of the concerns that have come to me and through others to make sure that we can get on with it. So again, I want to re-emphasize that when I spoke at the last joint select committee meeting, it was the last until sometime in September. So I've heard suspended, I've heard all different words. This is a priority, and hopefully my discussions at the level of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet is actually going to fast-track what exists now as the timelines for the 50% renewables. And that is where we are going, but we have to do it to make sure that we do not leave anything out, because as I said in my closing remarks, this has the potential to affect generations to come. Not next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Generations. And as I said to you, at this stage, colleague, I know that everybody is in a rush, but I am a bit too old to be accused of youthful exuberance. And therefore, please, bear with me and give me the time, and I assure you that I am going to deliver, and that whenever I am judged, whenever I am judged, when I am retired and gone, I want to be judged to say that I made a policy decision that is sound and that has worked for the people of Jamaica for generations to come. So, I promise you, I respect your experience based on the length of time that you have been minister, and I would never ever overlook that. And I can assure you that we will be in touch. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of items, announcements.
Prior to that, House Leader, members, the question before you is that the motion brought by the Minister be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. That motion is approved. Right.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So at this time, I ask for the recommittal of items, announcements, reports from committee, notices of motion given orally. Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that we have the recommittal of a number of items on the agenda. Announcements, report from committees, notices of motions given orally. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements?
Also laid on the table of the House today are copies of the report of the Joint Select Committee on its deliberations on the bill shortly entitled the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022.
Bills brought from the Senate? No. Reports from committees?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House of Representatives a copy of the report of the Joint Select Committee, the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022.
Notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that the report of the Joint Select Committee, Firearms, Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022, which was laid on the table of the House on the 26th day of July 2022, be adopted. At a later stage, I move for the suspension of the standing orders, enable me to take this motion.
Public business.
Madam Speaker.
Public business.
Madam Speaker, at this time, I now ask for the recommittal of statements by ministers.
The question before the House is that we have a recommittal of the item statements by ministers. Members, The question is that we do recommit the item public business, at which those in favor, those against. Dr. Chan.
No. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of standing orders, those of which I gave earlier.
Favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
These are my. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to present the report of the Joint Select Committee that was established to review the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Bill 2022. Members will recall that the Firearms Bill was tabled on February 10, 2022 and referred to a Joint Select Committee of Parliament over the course of a 5-month period. At 5 months, however, was interrupted by the budget and by the Easter break, which meant we really had 15 out of the 20 weeks to review this bill. We had 20 sittings of the committee, and Madam Speaker, given the level of import and urgency of this bill, several of those sittings were all-day meetings on sequential days, which meant we were doing a double session of Parliament on some days, so we end up the 21 sittings really meant about 26 sessions of parliamentary time. And I want to take the opportunity to commend all the members of the committee and the technical teams that were working on this bill. The process was a true demonstration of the commitment and cooperation of the committee members, and all of them went beyond the call of duty. And I want to express my appreciation, including members on the other side who really gave us good support on this bill and work with us. They will have submitted a minority report, Madam Speaker, but that is not in a bill of this complex, and as large, there can be occasional policy difference, and that's part of our elected democracy. But their effort and their participation was indeed productive, and they helped us to make us have a better bill here today. I want to thank all members. The Joint Select Committee completed deliberation on the bill on July 22, 2022, having received comments from several stakeholders, including the Jamaica Defence Force, the Proactive Jamaicans, Jamaica Rifle Association, the licensed firearm holders, the Jamaica Bar Association, the Law Offices of Peter Champagne and Company, the Council Bar Association, among others. The committee carefully considered these submissions and fully ventilated these in our meetings. Their recommendation outlined the report, and some amendments were derived from their recommendations. But, Mr. Speaker, the principal, or what was thought the more controversial aspect of the bill, which was the development of the prohibited firearms, the section dealing with unrestricted firearms, did not draw too much heat, except I said we have a policy difference with our colleagues who worked on the bill, and that went through very well. It was during the discussion of the regulation of licensed firearm holders that we run into a lot of controversy. The committee received a submission from the Jamaican for Justice on Friday, July 15, 2022. Unfortunately, it was received long after the call for comments had been closed and coincided with the concluding work of the committee, as a result of which the advanced stage of the committee's proceedings, the committee was not able to deliberate on the submission. Madam Speaker, I want to pay a special commendation to the technical teams that were associated with the Ministry from the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Justice, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the Firearms Licensing Authority, Institute of Forensic Science and Legal Medicine, the Office of the Parliamentary Council, the Attorney General of the Chambers, the Legal Reform Department, who are present at each of the sittings of the Joint Select Committee I must thank the technical team from the Committee of the Clerk of the House of Parliament, Madam Speaker, who provided invaluable support to the work of your committee. Indeed, I have to mention, in slightly extraordinary, the Committee of the Clerk of the House gave extraordinary amount of time, worked well and efficiently and competently the problem, and supported by the Parliamentary Council and the AD chambers. As I indicated, Mr. Speaker, when doing a bill of this complexity and size and meeting sequentially in days and all day, they need the pressure on the supporting staff to keep up is tremendous. It means legal issues have to come back to the ministry, the appropriate policy clarification is done within a time frame, get back to the Attorney General office who have to give her opinion in short time and very difficult and complex issues, and then get the Parliamentary Council who, in all of this, Mr. Speaker, they were outstanding and responded quickly and were able to get this bill to the House today. It was, they all deserve, I said, Mr. Speaker, tremendous commendation for the support to your committee. Madam Speaker, the firearms are the weapons of choice for criminals and criminal organizations operating in Jamaica. It could be described as a weapon of mass destruction in this country today. These organized criminal groups seek respect by causing fear and creating terror in communities. They are hostage to these criminals. As it stands, the risk of being apprehended while in possession of a legal firearm and ammunition outweighs the consequences under current legislation. The current legislative framework, that is the Firearms Act of 1967, provides no disincentives or very little disincentive for criminals and those who support their activities to hand over illegal guns or to avoid having them. The vast majority of murders in Jamaica are being committed with illegal guns, unrestricted firearms. There's a very lucrative trade in such firearms. And there are those who earn money in one aspect of criminal activity, then they buy the firearms at high price for those who have the network to bring them in from other countries, because they are not manufactured in Jamaica. And it has become not only the cause of so many homicide activity, so much homicidal activity, but also a big part of the criminal network business activity. The data shows that for the 4-year period between 2018 to 2021, some 2,700 firearms and more than 44,000 rounds of ammunition were seized by law enforcement agencies. Last year, 2021, we had 85% of the murders were committed with the use of the gun, 72% of which were attributed to gang relations, gang conflict, and at the same time, 80% of the 765 robberies involved the use of a firearm, and 1,250 shooting incidents were recorded across the island. This level of activity has been with us now for the last 20 years. It has become chronic and endemic and requires strong measures to begin to excoriate it out of the society and restore a level of public safety, especially in our challenged communities. Gang feuds and quarrels feature prominently in murders committed using illegal guns, which are being illegally trafficked into Jamaica and used to kill our citizens. Madam Speaker, the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction, Regulation Act 2022 seeks to repeal and replace the Firearms Act of 1967. We're bringing to make it much more relevant and bring it to the current situation. It addresses the current criminal landscape in Jamaica and presents a strong response to the proliferation of illegal firearms within our jurisdiction. The bill establishes a dual regime, and that, Madam Speaker, was maybe the cause of the much delay and research to ensure we had a satisfactory bill. It distinguishes between prohibited weapons or unregulated firearms and activities connected thereto, such as illicit trafficking, diversion, manufacture, stockpiling, possession, and the firearms that are duly authorized or registered, with notable improvements for the regulation and enforcement of the firearm industry. The bill, therefore, has almost three contrasting features. They need to bring this bill in place so as to generate legislation which would provide very strong penalties to those who operate, are held in possession of, or involved in the trading, manufacturing, or stockpiling of an illegal firearm, which we are now defined as a prohibited weapon in society. It needs strong laws. We recognize us pushing the boundaries of our legal tradition, but we think it was absolutely necessary to bring this in at this time. But to do so in one bill and provide, on the other hand, not so much, not penalty, not restriction, but regulating the legal firearm holders, which is essentially a service to the recreation and commercial trade firearms. Exactly two different things completely, but yet we're dealing with one article, and it proved a particularly challenging activity in getting the legislature right. One is creating a customer-friendly, user-friendly activity. I said a public service. The other one is giving the police some very powerful tools, which at times were actually pushing on the boundaries of our constitutionality. So it did provide some challenge, but the staff went about their business with diligence, worked and identified, legislation that could be adopted, went as far as actually finding a jurisdiction. We had two pieces of legislation, but joined in some way. We dealt with illegal firearms on the one hand and regulated firearms in another bill. The bill introduces new provisions to address Jamaica's adherence to the international treaty obligations, as well as the inadequacies which exist in the local framework, as such provisions relating to trafficking, diversion, stockpiling, and the movement of firearms, their parts, components, and ammunition have been introduced. The bill further provides for the marking of the firearms, capturing of ballistic signatures as they are registered, as well as the establishment of a national control system and a national registry, all important in ensuring we know where our legitimate operation firearms are and can identify with ease and without any particular challenge that will allow for mixing of the two. Madam Speaker, the bill, which was sent to the Joint Select Committee, proposed the introduction of harsher penalties for certain offences, such as the possession of a prohibited weapon with intent to traffic and the manufacturing of a prohibited weapon. For these egregious offences, the bill proposes imposing a mandatory term of imprisonment for 15 years before eligibility for parole. Madam Speaker, the bill, as reviewed by the Joint Select Committee, is divided into 10 parts, as I outlined when it was originally tabled in February of this year. I'll now give an overview of the Joint Select Committee report. Madam Speaker, the report being tabled outlines the recommended changes to the bill following the review and the deliberation of the Joint Select Committee. The report notes that the general objective of the bill, of the Act, was to establish a framework which prohibited firearms and ammunition that were illicitly traded and which regarded possession of these prohibited firearms and ammunition as the foundation on which other heinous and violent crimes are committed. The report further notes that the bill seeks to eliminate illegal possession, manufacture, trafficking, proliferation, and use of prohibited weapons, particularly through the provision of appropriate penalties which will deter such activities. It provides for and promotes effective management and regulation of the firearm industry through the establishment of a robust licensing regime and national registry. Crucial, because though the legitimate holder is screened and go through a screening process for the issuing of the license, we have to maintain a very strong institutional regulatory system for those firearms, and to ensure that as few as minimal number will reach in the illegal trade and become transshipped into the prohibited sector. Establish standards that were in keeping with internationally recognized norms and best practices for the firearm industry. Regulate the lawful manufacture, trafficking, possession and use of firearms and ammunition in the interest of personal and public safety, and align the legal framework in respect of firearms and ammunition with Jamaica's international treaty obligations. The Joint Select Committee, in reviewing the bill, made recommendations for the introduction of new terms such as assorted parts. Additional, the committee proposed amendments to the definition of some terms, including modification, firearms, parts, and components. The committee agreed that the definition of the term firearm should be amended to read as follows. A means any barreled weapon which discharges or is designed to discharge any shot, bullet, or other projectile, or 2, prohibited weapon unless the context otherwise requires and includes any such weapon created as 3D printed weapons or otherwise created through the use of electronic software. B includes any parts and components of any weapon referred to in paragraph A and C, and does not include an air rifle, air gun, or air pistol of a type or caliber prescribed by the minister. And in this clause, Mr. Speaker, see, we have done some future-proofing work to ensure that 3D printed firearms come under the prohibited weapon. That's a new technology, it's evolving, and this wording had to be so structured that even if there's changing software and so forth as we proceed, that any weapon that comes through an electronic software in the virtual space and is then manufactured by any kind of machine tool is still a prohibited weapon. This is an area that is evolving. At the same time, too, we have looked at the sporting fraternity and responded to their calls, many calls. In fact, while they said our occupation and the great threat to the peace and safety was the illegal firearm, when we had any variation or any regulation that seemed to not necessarily impair, but appear to impair the sport shooters, we got every single sport shooter right into the committee. But indeed, we appreciate their interest, and they did make contribution, which in the end allowed us to have a better bill. Madam Speaker, in reviewing the bill, the committee made the recommendation in respect of the penalty provisions that are provided for the bill, whether in Part 2 or the 6th schedule. Indeed, you will see in the prohibited weapons section, that's Part 2, the penalty included in the clause as we proceed, which was part of the design to overcome preventing too much overlap between the legal and the illegal. Importantly, the committee deliberated on the provision of mandatory minimum sentences for the offences outlined in Part 2 of the bill, which considered especially egregious, while there was strong and varied discourse surrounding the introduction of a mandatory minimum sentence. These penalties are retained in light of the grave situation the country is in at this point in time. Indeed, the more fundamental debate was on the question of what they call the simple possession. We retained the mandatory sentence, Mr. Speaker, because for the active criminal killer, the chopper, as you know, say, at this point in time, you will very rarely find him active to be able to, the police to say, that's him, or find him, engage the police quickly and effectively, and at any time, quickly and actively, so that possession is the most likely charge we have to use to find some of these members. So we have to treat it as we have done, and we feel it is important to treat simple possession as part of the very serious offense and provide them with mandatory sentences, because we can, the majority of the choppers will find them with the chopper, or at a point where they are in possession of. Not usually getting the evidence where they have committed the egregious crime of killing somebody or shooting somebody. Because where they operate, most times they have they institute a level of fear. It is extremely difficult, the kind of first-person affidavit required to commit them. Possession is key. Committing them for possession is key to ensure an effective piece of legislation. Madam Speaker, having differences in policy is not always a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it's a characteristic of a strong democracy, and therefore said the opposition was fulsome in their participation, and I think we work together as an excellent team at the committee level, all at this, in developing this, in reviewing this piece of legislation. However, the widespread possession and use of illegal firearms and ammunition and the low sentencing for firearm-related offences underscores the urgent need to strengthen the legislative framework. We must implement a more robust enforcement mechanism, and we have to establish penalties that are commensurate with the egregious nature of offences connected to the possession and use of unregulated, unregistered firearms. The committee proposed several amendments to Part 3 of the bill and the corresponding schedule dealing with the operation of the Firearm Licensing Authority. This was FLA. This was with a view to refine some of the provisions relating to the constitution of the board of the authority. Additionally, proposals relating to the restriction in respect of firearms and ammunition as outlined in Part 4 were discussed and agreed. Of no significant change was made to Clause 34 to remove the penalty associated with the offence of importing a firearm which does not bear a mark. Instead, the committee agreed to amend the provision to read: a constable, customs officer, or authorized officer shall detain any firearm imported into Jamaica that does not bear the mark required under Section 29(1) or 2. So you see, Mr. Speaker, immediately we are beginning to separate the illegal from the legal, the unregulated from the regulated, in that if someone is caught in trafficking, they will be subject to serious penalties. But some importer who legally, legitimate importer who is operating, license, etc., bring the firearm and we find that it is not properly marked, he is not immediately subject to the kind of penalties associated with the illegal firearm. The firearm, of course, will be detained and he'll be given the opportunity to prove his innocence, of course. In fact, he will not be charged immediately. The first thing is to detain that firearm, and he can seek to import the appropriate firearm that he is seeking to get for his business. This is, of course, part of our whole registry of firearms, because the marking must be there to do the initial registration, and the Firearm Licensing Authority will further mark the firearms, and you have a distinct national ID. And for the government-owned firearms, the Institute of Forensic Science and Legal Medicine will in fact have a unique mark for the government firearms as well as their forensic signature. Madam Speaker, as it relates to Part 5 of the bill, firearms authorization, as the report outlines, several clauses were amended. This was with a view to streamline the operation of the Firearm Licensing Authority to perform its regulatory functions and the obligations of holders of firearm authorizations. For example, proposal relating to suspension, revocation, and cancellation of firearm authorization, as outlined at clauses 83 to 85, were discussed and agreed. Clause 83(1) is amended to read: by notice in accordance with subsection 2, the board may, on its own motion or on a complaint made by any person, suspend for such reasonable period as the board considers appropriate, but which in any event shall not exceed 3 months, any firearm authorization granted by the board. Madam Speaker, a notable change in respect of the appeals process outlined at Part 6 is the removal of the ministerial involvement in the process. The review panel established under Clause 86 shall be the final decision in respect of appeals, and by any person agreed by a decision of the board to grant a firearm authorization. It is important to note, however, that this does not include a firearm manufacturer's license, which will be an industry and has to get the level of cabinet through the minister, which process for grant is outlined in Clause 60. This was so determined because the cabinet is the ultimate decision-making body when it comes to the granting of firearm manufacturing license. Madam Speaker, is an area where there was the lawyers and distinguished lawyers from both sides and in the House and outside the House was indicated that the minister should retain some level of discretion with, of course, rigid guidelines. But I must confess I am not unhappy with the removal of the this privilege. My desk, the biggest file on my desk is a file of appeals by all and sundry seeking the minister to intervene and return, grant them a license or get them a license. It's a very demanding and tedious process. And I said, we have seen from the history that it can cause a number of problems, and naturally so. It is, of course, I said, the principle that in any regulatory atmosphere, especially in democracy, the minister should retain some level of discretion. But the fact is, the firearms are a very sensitive item, and we are introducing a very important bill, and they still have the right to, in fact, appeal to the judicial system if the firearms review committee turn them down. Recommendations for amendment to Part 7 of the bill, which deals with the National Firearms Registry, included the expansion of Clause 89, functions of the registrar. Madam Speaker, given the global space within which we operate and our issues with transnational organized crime, it is considered especially important for the registrar to be able to share information with a foreign law enforcement agency. This is outlined at Clause 89.6, which reads, subject to the provision of this section, the registrar may, with the approval of the minister, enter into a memorandum of understanding or other agreement or arrangement with a foreign law enforcement agency regarding the exchange of information relevant to the investigation or prosecution of any offense involving any prohibited weapon, firearm, or ammunition. And this particular clause and the entire section of 89 and 88 took us some time to ensure we were able to satisfy our constitutional requirement of privacy, but still have allowed to have the arrangements with international law enforcement agencies to deal with the illegal trafficking of firearms. Very important, but also very instructive in how it was the legal team took us through this process. Madam Speaker, a foreign law enforcement agency would be any entity or association of entities so prescribed for the purpose of this Act, having under the laws of any territory, investigative or prosecutorial functions in relation to criminal offences involving firearms, ammunition, or prohibited weapons. 2, licensing or registration functions in relation to firearms, ammunition, or prohibited weapons. 21. I wish to highlight some of the new provisions that have been introduced in Part 9 of the bill pursuant to the discussion of the committee. Outlining Clause 97 is a fixed penalty regime. This is allowed for the imposition of administrative fines on any holder of a firearm authorization for the administrative type breaches. This proposal is akin to provision within Section 130 of the Banking Services Act 2014. This will allow licensees the opportunity to discharge any liability to conviction of specified offences by payment of a fixed penalty. It is expected that such administrative type sanction would apply to Clause 77.2, failure to display notice as required, and Clause 78, contravention of terms and conditions, or any other offence which a minister may prescribe. Failure to pay the fixed penalty within a specified period will result in the prosecution of the offence. These fixed penalties will be outlined in the regulations. Madam Speaker, I pause again. Mr. Speaker, when the first gun quota Act was passed, some will recall that a gentleman who failed to license his firearm was accosted by the police. And of course, he was in the possession of a legal firearm. He got that license for a year. And he was, in fact, given the mandatory minimum at the time. That's the kind of thing we're seeking to avoid. I think we have been able to come up with a bill that does that quite effectively, separating the regulatory side from the illegal and prohibited side. And it was one of the challenges we faced in trying to create a bill that would allow a genuine separation that could be, so that they could be effectively regulated and prosecuted in many ways. Madam Speaker, a new Clause 98 has been introduced to provide for the use of controlled delivery as a technique for investigation, and that the use of controlled delivery shall be accepted in a court of law. Controlled delivery, Mr. Speaker, means the technique of allowing illicit or suspected assignments of firearms, ammunition, or other related material that pass out of, through, or into the territory of one or more states with the knowledge and under the supervision of the competent authorities with a view to identifying persons involved in the commission of offences under this Act. The competent authority shall be the Commissioner of Police, Chief of Defence Staff, Director General of MOCA, and the Commissioner of Customs. In layman's terms, Mr. Speaker, if a shipment of firearms is identified, the police commissioner or any of the heads of the relevant agencies have the authority to have those firearms replaced by fake items looking the same as available, like the firearms you use in a movie, and have them replaced and shipped and delivered. If unless that is authorized, it would be a challenge, and that's the best way to be. That's one mechanism of trying to find out who some of these perpetrators of criminal trafficking are. Furthermore, there is a new clause 102 which makes an offence to assault or obstruct, hinder or resist an authorized officer. A fine of $1 million is prescribed for such an offence. Madam Speaker, the bill sent to the Joint Select Committee proposed that consequential amendments be made to several pieces of legislation in order to bring them into alignment with the bill. Per the discussion of the committee, several other consequential amendments were proposed. These include amendments to the Offence Against a Person Act to impose a mandatory minimum penalty of 20 years for offences involving the use of a firearm, such as shooting with intent to do grievous bodily harm. So, of course, just include that there is good synchrony between the bill and this bill and the other bills where firearms offences are concerned. This is in light of the minimum sentence proposed in the Firearms Bill. The Process of Crime Act is also being consequentially amended in the second schedule by deleting item 4 and substituting therefore the following: prohibited weapon, etc., for an offence under Part 2 of the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act. The committee further made a recommendation for the mandatory minimum sentence provided for murder under Section 3(1)(c) b(i) of the Offence Against the Person Act to be increased in light of the mandatory minimum sentences provided for in the Firearms Bill. Section 3(1)(c) and b(i) does not relate specifically to only to firearms, but has wider applicability. The JSC only has a remit to review the Firearms Bill and to make recommendations to amend that bill and to make consequential amendments that arise. The Joint Select Committee, therefore, your committee, Mr. Speaker, therefore recommends that the relevant ministry, the Ministry of Justice, I think, or Legal Affairs, consider the matter for amendment. It is, as indicated by the Legal Reform Department, that section of the Offence Against the Persons Act is more nuanced and could not be amended to deal with firearms, and therefore must be dealt with by the host ministry. It is relevant to, in fact, bring them in line. Madam Speaker, the report of a Joint Select Committee on its deliberations on the bill shortly entitled the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022 is hereby tabled with the recommendations outlined. Having regard to the number of amendments, it is proposed that the original bill that was tabled on February 10, 2022 be withdrawn and a new amended bill be tabled today. Of course, it will be tabled today, Mr. Speaker, but not debated today. And because of the nature of the bill, it's a big bill. It, as I said, has chartered some new directions, introduced some novel ideas, and therefore it is important that all members of the House have time to review it, read it, and on both sides, because this is a major piece of legislation that is going to sort the bring. Much time was spent in getting to where we are today, and I said I have commended the teams who have brought us there, but it is still important that members of the House examine this bill in detail, and we seek to bring it to the House back in the opening of a new session to take it through all the stages. But it's among the reasons that I insisted, and the staff responded. In fact, again, I have comment by Minister with me, Minister of State, and my Permanent Secretary said it was a grueling period in the last 20 weeks as we seek to bring this on time and meet the deadline of the 26th. And I said I can't be more express greater appreciation, especially to the technical teams, Parliamentary Council. It might be our advisor on parliamentary expression, like the member from East Kingston, the expert there, and our elders. And for the parliamentary, but the CPC was like a gem in this operation. We really did extremely high quality and good work in very demanding times for this particular activity. Madam Speaker, as I close, I wish to underscore the national crisis that we are faced with as a result of the widespread access, possession and use of illegal firearms and ammunition. We must continue to work collaboratively to present a robust legislative framework and a united front with strong deterrent measures for these criminal activities and these criminals, heartless criminals that go across our countryside, our nation, and take the lives of our people, snuffing out young lives, innocent people from time, all across. And that applies in many communities, a challenge we have to deal with and deal with effectively as we restore public safety and good order. Many of the shootings, of course, some will say take between gangsters, but those gangsters are young Jamaican men who provide alternative opportunities, can make a major contribution to this country. In fact, we have lost so many. It's difficult to analyze and, in fact, put a value to that. It has been it's a very traumatic activity across this country, and we have to find ways to deal with it. And as indicated, there are two angles. This is one line we have to provide the criminal violence. Jamaica Consular Force as an institution is going through a powerful transformation as well as recruiting additional numbers, extensive training, and in process, we need to provide them with the tools to overcome the plague of criminal violence that besets our country, both in the immediate situation as well as we take other actions for long-term solution. I look forward to the support of the members and accepting this report you have tabled today. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I think it may be just appropriate for me to contribute to the debate on the report just by reading the minority report, which is very short. It's just 2 pages long. None of the members who are party to that report are in the chamber right now. The opposition members of your committee support the objectives of the government in creating a regime that inter alia, A, targets prohibited firearms and the activities connected thereto, and B, makes a clear separation between illicit activities and creating a robust licensing regime for the effective management and regulation of the firearm industry. The opposition members of your committee acknowledge the considerable work which has been done to achieve the objectives of the legislation. The opposition members of your committee are, however, not in accord with the mandatory sentencing, which is a feature of the bill. The opposition members of your committee are of the view that mandatory sentencing removes the discretion of a judge to consider mitigating aspects of the sentencing. A first offender with a previously unblemished record is treated the same as a person of unsavory reputation. Further, there is no credible evidence that mandatory sentencing is a deterrent to the commission of an offence. The opposition members of your committee share the view that the judicial function includes tailoring the punishment to fit the crime. For example, the mandatory sentence of 15 years for possession of a prohibited weapon is predicated, and by the way, it is not a mandatory sentence of 15 years. It's a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole until you've served 15 years, and parole is discretionary. But the point continues. For example, the treatment of possession of a prohibited weapon is predicated on the view that the possession of a prohibited weapon is the foundation on which other heinous or violent crimes are committed. This clause fails to acknowledge the realities that in some communities, persons might have no choice but to conceal a weapon at the dictates of another person. It is the view of the opposition members of your committee that in such a case, where it is not demonstrated that the weapon would be used in furtherance of a criminal purpose, a judge should have a discretion in relation to the sentence to be imposed. The concern that sentences being imposed by the court are not of sufficient weight is no longer valid, as the prosecution has been given the right to appeal sentences by virtue of the Judicature Appellate Jurisdiction Amendment Act 2021 and the Judicature Parish Court Amendment Act 2021. Your committee is missing an opportunity to legislate in a manner which would meet its objective without causing an injustice. As a parliament and country, we must always be careful not to pander to extremism in a justifiable search for urgent solutions. Rather, we must at all times seek balance, informed by lessons of our experiences as a country. That is the minority report, Madam Speaker. Obviously, the report involves the withdrawal of the original bill and the appending of a new replacement bill to it, which will be debated on a subsequent occasion. Having just had a very cursory glance at it, I have a couple of questions for you off the air, which I will share with you afterwards. But it's obviously a major piece of work, and I commend the Minister for his commitment to having it done. I remember he had anticipated it would have been finished by April. I told him that wasn't likely, but nevertheless, it was an ambitious target, and they finished their work by July. So that is an achievement. And although we have some concerns about that aspect of the legislation, which the minority report speaks to, overall, we think it's an important step to have brought it this far, and we hope that when it is eventually passed into law, it will have a positive impact on the use of firearms in the country by reducing the number of murders and injuries caused by illegal firearms, which is, of course, the most serious problem facing our country at this time from the perspective of national security. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. As I said, your members did participate fully in this. And I think for everyone in the committee in this piece of legislation, we learned the instruction for those who are not legally minded, but some of our young lawyers, especially our first-term MPs. I think we don't mention, veering too far, someone like MP from Central Kingston, who came to almost every meeting, spent time as a first-term MP, members of the Senate, on both sides who were hopping into court, coming out and joining us to get a quorum, and then hopping out of court to participate and make their contribution, getting back in court and coming in and following through. It was really, and the committee, your committee members, Madam Speaker, worked well at this, and as I said, we comment them all. There's a policy difference, and I said it is not contentious, and in a democracy, the fact is that we can have different policy initiative, and it's not so, and we can work together on that. And also indicate that in the question of mandatory sentences, there are two pieces of, two aspects of legislation which still allow some review of where the incident of questionable, and the margins of the requirements, so to speak, of justification. There's, of course, the possibility of a judge issuing a certificate, which I think is used to appeal the sentence and is accepted under the Criminal Justice Administration Act, right, which came at your time, is still there. I think that, and in fact, the Minister of Justice, Legal Affairs, suggesting an additional outlet to have a sentencing hearing at the same court in which the trial was held, so that it can be reviewed and therefore looked at again. So opportunity there, we recognize that it can pose a challenge, and in the nature of law, while the majority of our problem will come from the criminal activity, you just need to find one case. And as the lawyer was saying, the rights will say to me, one case too much. But we are providing the required outlets for the individual who may feel, in which there was some, there was a mistrial that can be looked at. But the problem, Madam Speaker, as indicated from the statistics, we use percentages, which sometimes are not reflective. If we use the absolute numbers, this country has been experiencing over 1,000 murders for 20 years. That is well over 20,000 of our young men, largely, who have lost in this process. It's measurable. We have a major problem as a democracy. We have the highest homicide rate in the globe. In fact, we have the highest homicide rate in many years across the globe, including countries which have gun culture, involving civil strife, and involving all kind of gangstering activity. This legislation, piece of legislation, is seeking, to, as I said, and as one member said, to bring to the fore legislative process that can help us to get gun crime under control. Many of the countries that have the kind of problem we have in terms of criminal violence are using measures that are far more extreme. I think only in the month back, about 6 weeks ago, one country in Latin America region, which has a population a little bit bigger than ours, but not much. They picked up 19,000 gangsters and locked them up. Without any question. Of course, it's cut their murder rate overnight, but that's not the kind of thing we'd seek to perpetuate in our society, and it does not necessarily bring the kind of sustainable solution we want over the long term. So we're as a government, seeking to find the kind of legislative framework in which we can restore, as I said, good order and public safety. So, Madam Speaker.
Sorry, Minister, just on a point of clarification on one issue.
Yeah.
The idea that the trial judge can issue a certificate that the mandatory sentence has been imposed, but he thinks or she thinks it's excessive in the circumstances, and the Court of Appeal can review that. That was introduced into the Criminal Justice Administration Act by an amendment in 2015. However, there are certain exclusions from that process. And if you look in the 7th schedule of the bill, as appended to the report, it amends the Criminal Justice Administration Act, Section 42C, to add to the list of excluded provisions an offence under Part 2 of this bill. So it means that when you are sentenced under this bill, Part 2 for an offence under Part 2, which is all the firearms offences or prohibited weapons offences, you will not, that procedure of issuing a certificate and then the Court of Appeal being able to review will not be applicable. So that is a concern. And I think that it's very important that that be understood, because if that's not the intent, then this provision in the 7th schedule should be deleted.
Thank you. I know it was examined, and I'm not sure. Although I mentioned both items might have been one or the other, I think the legal minds were advised that we go for the sentencing hearing. I thought they left it, which is a concept. Yeah.
Is there a provision in there for that?
There should be in there for amendments for the development of that particular item. I'll certainly, as we go through the bill, ensure that the provision is provided. Right?
Okay.
I'm not sure it is now, but my colleague, my legal mind here advised me. That was what was discussed. In reality, it was either or. And it seems that the decision was that we should have the sentence hearing, which is felt is done in the same court with the judge, with the easier way of doing it.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that that is in place. But none of us, I think all members of the committee, including this side, nobody wants to lock up anybody who is innocent for life. But I said we have to ensure we get a robust bill. So, Madam Speaker, I now seek the approval of the report of the Joint Select Committee by members.
Members, the question before the House is that the report be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This Honourable House would have seen numerous amendments in the report of the Joint Select Committee, which was earlier approved by this House for the incorporation of the bill, shortly entitled the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022. In accordance with the Standing Order 63(1), I will now seek the leave of this House for the bill to be withdrawn and for a new bill to be tabled which will incorporate all the amendments in the approved report.
Members, you have heard the Minister. Is it your wish that the bill before us be withdrawn and a new bill be tabled incorporating the amendments in the report which we approved earlier? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, the bill is withdrawn.
Thank you. Bill is withdrawn. I now ask for the recommittal of the item. Notes of motion given orally, enabling me to table a bill shortly entitled the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022.
Members, the question before the House is that the item on the agenda, notices of motion given orally, be recommitted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Again, thank you, Madam Speaker, and to my colleagues.
So notices of motion given orally. You can go ahead, Dr. Chan.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022. Thank you.
Leader.
Speaker, the Minister of Sports, having previously asked for a recommittal of the statement by ministers and that being approved by Parliament, it is now my honor to ask you, Madam Speaker, to invite the Minister to make her statement.
Minister, the Honorable Olivia Babsy-Gray.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Do we have copies for the opposition?
Yes, the
copies of the...
All of these should have copies of my presentation. Madam Speaker, I wish to update the House and the nation on plans for the main celebration period of the Diamond Jubilee, which runs from tomorrow, July 27, until Independence Day. It is our tradition to have a significant commemoration of our independence milestone every 5 years. The purpose of these 5 yearly commemorations is twofold. On one hand, we reflect and do a report card on our progress as a country. We see to what extent our goals were met, and on the other hand, we use our celebration to set goals for the next 5 years while finding opportunities to engage and motivate our people towards achieving our national objectives. So the celebration of the Diamond Jubilee, the celebration of our 60th anniversary of independence, it's time to reflect, Madam Speaker. It's a time to redouble our efforts towards making Jamaica land we love a country of peace, harmony, equality, justice, liberty, and prosperity. But it is also, Madam Speaker, a time to celebrate. Our journey hasn't been perfect. There are still many things to get right. But there is much that we have in Jamaica to celebrate. In 60 years, Madam Speaker, Jamaica has produced the fastest man ever in the great Usain Bolt. And at regular intervals, Madam Speaker, we produce the fastest woman alive, on a regular basis. So we turn them out, Madam Speaker. So if it's not Elaine Thompson-Hero, it's Sharika, who has astounded the world with her performance at the Games just recently. They are products of a homegrown sports system that has produced many world and Olympic champions over the last 60 years. Champions such as Shelley and Fraser Price, Asafa Powell, Veronica Campbell-Brown, Hansa Parchment, Sharika Jackson, Johan Blake, and I could go on and on, Dion Hemmings, on and on, Madam Speaker. That's only a handful of the outstanding track athletes that Jamaica has produced since 1962. There are also many others in other disciplines, such as the reggae girls who have qualified back-to-back for the World Cup, and the reggae boys in football, who have done well on occasions, and who I know will do well again. The Sunshine Girls in netball, let's give them a big round of applause. Our outstanding cricketers, including Chris Gale, Courtney Walsh, Michael Holding, Stephanie Taylor, and many others. We have produced outstanding boxers, including Bunny Grant, independent Jamaica's first sport champion. There is hardly a sport, Madam Speaker, and Michael McCallum. And Trevor Burby. I tell you, there's so many. And we have outstanding cricketers, Chris Gale, Courtney Walsh, Michael Holding, Stephanie Taylor. So we have produced outstanding sports personalities in the area of what I call physical culture. There is hardly a sport, including winter sport, in which Jamaica has made an impact in the last 60 years. That is reason to celebrate. So, Madam Speaker, consider this. More than 1,700 athletes from 179 countries competed at the World Athletics Championships in Oregon, USA recently. Jamaica finished third on the medal table with 2 gold, 7 silver, and 1 bronze. Only the host country, the United States, and Ethiopia finished ahead of us. I use this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to congratulate every single member of our team that competed at Oregon. And it wasn't the smoothest of journeys for some of them. We are naturally delighted and happy for those that medaled, but I'm extremely proud of the effort that every member of our team gave in the process. Several of them recorded personal best, season's best, or national record. And they are all among the best in the world by virtue of qualifying to compete at the World Games. When you place 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th, you are the number 4, the number 5, the number 6, the number 7 in the world. And that means something, Madam Speaker. So I'm asking my colleagues, Madam Speaker, to just put your hands together and applaud our athletes. In culture, science, and the arts, the name Jamaica has become a big deal in the last 60 years, thanks to our singers, our songwriters, our producers, our musicians, our studio and sound engineers, our writers, our fashion designers, our filmmakers, our actors of television, film, and stage, and I could go on and on and on. Because of people's excellence, Jamaica has developed one of the best nation brands in the world. The world is in love with Jamaica, Madam Speaker. The world is in love with the way we walk, with the way we talk, the way we bossy and show off, our swag, and even sometimes our colorful words. We are Jamaicans and we come from great people. And greatness is within us, Madam Speaker. We have great things to do, and that is why, for the Diamond Jubilee, we have set ourselves the mission of reigniting the nation for greatness. Madam Speaker, it has been a long road, a hard road, and in spite of many challenges, we have remained a resilient people. But some of us have lost a bit of our faith, a bit of our courage, and a bit of our dedication towards building back. And at times, they only see the negative. But especially during this period, Madam Speaker, this government aims to use the achievements of our compatriots to inspire the rest of us to achieve the greatness that is within us. So let us reignite the passion, reignite the creativity, and the indomitable spirit of the Jamaican people to renew faith, courage, and dedication. And that is what we call on all Jamaicans to do at this time. So even though we put much of the focus of the Diamond Jubilee on building up our country's infrastructure for this and future generations, we have a lot to celebrate, and we will celebrate. So, Madam Speaker, here's a schedule of activities, of celebratory activities, starting tomorrow with the Governor General's Independence Reception at King's House, which will bring diplomats here in Jamaica, leaders of industry, and some of our political representatives and civil society leaders to a reception which is being hosted by the Governor General. And at that reception, there will be performances that will include Della Manley, Dwight Richards, and Ken Booth. But it's not only a reception and entertainment. There will be an exhibition curated by the Institute of Jamaica, dubbed Birth of a Nation, Jamaica in 1962. On Thursday, we will have the finals of the Jamaica Festival Song Competition at the National Indoor Sports Complex. And Madam Speaker, the last time I spoke on the plans for festival, I had indicated that the festival song, because we could not find the kind of entries that were important, I said that we would not have the competition. But Madam Speaker, Jamaicans love controversy. And it became a controversial matter. And I'm telling you, we couldn't ask for better promotion. In 1 week, we got more entries when we reopened the competition than we had for the over 7 months that we were promoting and asking for entries. And we now have 10 good songs that are being played, and I'm sure everyone here, you have heard the songs, and I will send out to you, I'll make available to you CD copies of the 10 songs, so you can play them at your own convenience. And also send them digitally. I will do vinyl specially for you, Minister Mackenzie. I promise you that one. Right. So, over the few weeks, members have had the opportunity to vote for their favorite song, and you can vote on the digital platform through Lime or Digicel, and you can also vote on the Reggae Jamaica app. And the finals, the winning song or the winning finalist, the winner of the festival song, will be selected from the tally of the votes and also the judges' input. Members of the public have also been voting for their favorite gospel star. So not only we do the secular, but we also treat with gospel. And I should tell you that one of the outstanding stars of the gospel competition is Kevin Downswell, who you all know. So we'll have the finale on Saturday, July 30, from the studios of the Creative Production and Training Center beginning at 8 p.m. And it will be broadcast live on PBCJ, Love TV, and Mellow TV, as well as being streamed worldwide. We have been taught that in all things we must give thanks. The Jamaica 60th National Thanksgiving Service will be held on Sunday, July 31 at Boulevard Baptist Church, beginning at 9:30 a.m. And participating in the national service will be the Prime Minister of Jamaica and the Leader of the Opposition. Leader, you have confirmed your attendance, right? Well, the Leader of the Opposition has always attended the national events, and so I know he will be there. On Sunday evening, if he's not traveling, on Sunday evening, we will gather at Seville Heritage Park in St. Anne for Emancipation Jubilee, where we will pay homage to our ancestors who fought and died for the freedoms we enjoy today. And I announce that we will be granting free admission to Seville Heritage Park for Emancipation Jubilee this year. I also want to indicate that we will unveil a plaque in honor of Minion Phillips, the late Minion Phillips, the mother of Michael Phillips, a member of Parliament, one of our colleague member of Parliament here. And she played a critical role in the return of the remains of two enslaved persons whose remains were buried at the back of the Great House, and they were transported back to Ghana, where they were reinterred. Among the performers for the Emancipation Jubilee, Freddie McGregor, Marcia Griffiths, West Rock, Sister Pat, and a number of other outstanding Jamaican performers. And we will also have our cultural groups, the Morant Bay Kumina Group, the Charlestown Maroons, and the Islington Cultural Group. I have invitation and tickets here for members of Parliament who wish to attend. I can provide you with tickets, I have them right here, for your constituents to attend as well. So I have VVIP tickets as well as general admission tickets, and they're available for you. At 10 o'clock on Emancipation Day, we welcome back the Independence Float and Street Parade. The last time was in 2018. The Float and Street Parade will start at the Randy Williams Entertainment Center on Hope Road, goes to Halfway Tree, then to Oxford Road, then to Tom Redcombe, and end up in the National Stadium car park. The Float and Street Parade will include a number of our Jamaican sound systems, including Stone Love, Renaissance, and Rough Cut. We will have 8 exciting floats, 7 music trucks, 7 costume groups, effigies, John Canoe, youth groups, over 1,000 participants. And in fact, we will have the JCF participating as well. and the JDF. So what we're going to have is the JDF having 2 wreckers in the parade, and they will be displaying some of the interesting features of the JDF. And as well, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, they have 2 trucks in the parade. One that will be showcasing the present musical structure of the Constabulary Band, featuring its most current members, as well as a truck that will highlight the Community Safety and Security Program, which the Ministry of National Security promotes. So, moving on. Oh, we will also have classic cars and bikers. Really exciting, and I think the whole family should be brought out to view this. We're asking people to come out early. It's been a long time since we have been able to have an independence float and street parade. I'm really looking forward to this, and I want to especially thank the Prime Minister for insisting on us doing the float and street parade, and the Minister of Finance for finding the additional funds so we could do so. We'll also be crowning on Emancipation Day the Jamaica Festival Queen in the Independence Village. Now, the Independence Village will open from 3 o'clock every day with a variety of activities, including a special event that we call Old School Dance Hall on August 2. And I know that there's a particular gentleman on the other side who like old school dance events, and who is having his own event at Bournemouth, right, on the 7th. So this event will pay tribute to some of the veterans of our music: Josie Wales, Admiral Bailey, Peter Metro, Borough Banton, Junior Cat, Lone Ranger, Major Mackerel, Danny Dredd, and of course, Ricky Trooper. On August 3, we will host the ever-exciting Melody-Round, which is a potpourri of performances from the best of the festival performing arts competition. On August 4, we will have Jamaica Praise, which is a major gospel concert featuring Rhoda Isabella, Grace Trillers, Latoya Hamilton, and Kukudu, Kevin Downswell, Carlene Davis, and more. On August 5, the eve of Independence Day, we will have a watch night. And I don't know how many of you remember watch night events in the village beginning at 8 p.m. And we will come together to share music, food, and just good vibes as we contemplate that moment at midnight on August 6, 1962. Then, Madam Speaker and colleagues, the main event, the Jamaica 60 Grand Gala inside the National Stadium on Independence Day, beginning at 6 p.m. On this occasion, we will honor Derek Morgan and Sanchez with the Music Icon Award for their sterling contribution to the popularity of Jamaican music on the world stage. And I would ask you all to please acknowledge by applauding their contribution to the development of the music. The Grand Gala will feature exciting formation performances by young people from communities in Kingston, St. Andrew, and St. Catherine, some of whom have never been to the National Stadium before. In total, we will have more than 2,500 performers and crew at the Grand Gala this year, and take it from me, it's going to be grand. It is going to be extremely grand, and there will be a special high-profile guest from overseas who will be present. That I can't announce at this time, but will be announced at the appropriate time by the appropriate ministry. We will also have some of the biggest names performing there. Beanie Man, Barrington Levy, TJ, Tony and Singh will be performing as well. Glacier Robinson, Tessan Chin, and more. And of course, the artists who promote Leg of the Bird, and you know, although exactly right. So it's going to be entertainment for the young and the old. We anticipate that 30,000 people will attend the gala. And as usual, we will be issuing tickets to help to manage the crowd. We have locations where tickets will be available. We will be announcing those locations shortly. But I just want to make a special appeal that those who are not able to get tickets, it will be live on television, it will be live on the electronic boards across the island, and we will be streaming right across the world. We will have fireworks as usual, and we have a special show, a spectacular show that we want it to be it's the first time in the Caribbean this will be done. And we want it to be a surprise. And in addition to that, we're going to have a flyover by a friendly country, and we're going to have paratroopers from Guyana participating in the event as well. So I actually can mention some of the ticket outlets. Sangster's bookstore locations in Crossroads, Spring Plaza, Portmore Pines, and in Montego Bay. We will have other locations in Morant Bay, WorldNet Microfinance branches island-wide, and of course at the National Stadium, at the Village, and at the JCDC offices. The celebrations on Independence Day will not take place in Kingston alone, because Kingston is not Jamaica. And so we will have events right across the island, flag-raising ceremonies in every parish, special major events, for example, Treasure Beach in St. Elizabeth, which will feature boat parade, a street parade, and sports festival. In Montego Bay, we will have a mini gala, a huge gospel concert paid for and hosted by the Deputy Prime Minister. Paid for and hosted by the Deputy Prime Minister. And of course, the Minister of Tourism is going to create excitement on the hip strip. That's right. So, and of course, right across Jamaica that night, street dances will be held. Of course, the Western Gala, the mini gala in Montego Bay will be held on the 7th. So it's not competing with the gala in Kingston on the 6th. But they will have their own space and their own time on August 7th. And the Western Gala will feature Jermaine Edwards, Tammy T, Georgia Henry, and not TJ, La Lee, Tessan Chin, Governor, and more. And we're going to have this special, which I had mentioned earlier, and I didn't say what it was, but I'll mention it. It's a special drone show. Never yet seen in the Caribbean. Drone. But we're going to have a large number of drones. Huh? First, a spectacular drone show. And we will have that drone show in Kingston at the Gala, as well as in Montego Bay at the Western Gala. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the team who have been working around the clock to ensure that our Diamond Jubilee will be a success. It's not perfect. It's not everything that I was hoping for, but within the limitations of our resources. As they say, Jamaicans love to take them hand, make fashion, and we have done so. And I'm inviting all my colleagues to make themselves available to participate. We have made arrangements for you. Just please indicate what you would like to attend, what participation you want, and also indicate the events that you are planning in your constituency. And just to say that as we celebrate our Diamond Jubilee, and we reignite our nation for greatness, we also want to reignite our nation for togetherness. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and God bless you all.
Madam Speaker, the opposition joins the government first in commending and congratulating our athletes who did so well at the World Championships. And forgive me if I just mention a few, because I do believe it's worth highlighting. Shelley and Fraser Price at 35 as a mother and being world champion is outstanding. Sharika Jackson's 21:45 is the second fastest time ever run in the history of the 200. We have a national record with Brittany Anderson in the 100 hurdles. And I want to encourage Jamaicans. We were disappointed with a couple of the events. Please, let us not berate our athletes and let's maintain perspective. You know, coming third with 10 medals, you have some countries that don't medal at all. We were disappointed in the 4x1 women not to get the goal. But again, let's maintain perspective. We have done fantastically well. Let's support the athletes, not just when they get to that stage, but importantly, as they develop as athletes here. We have demonstrated that we have the capacity, not just with the athletes, but with our coaches and a system which is the envy of the entire world. True. And we have a lot to be proud of. And I want to also encourage those who are on their way to the Commonwealth Games, which are taking place in the UK, that they have the support of the Jamaican public as they again continue to fly our flag very high. Madam Speaker, the events as outlined by the Minister should certainly lift the spirits of all Jamaicans, and we certainly look forward to the events. I am glad that they are taking place across the country, not just in the corporate area. I'm happy that we have reinstituted the festival song. I think it's important in our 60th anniversary, and we look forward to a week or two where hopefully all the negatives will be compressed for that period, and we can celebrate the greatness within us. As the Minister said, there's so much about Jamaica that is good and positive, and we want to showcase that to the rest of the world. So we certainly support the events. We will be there, and we know that our constituents look forward to participating as well. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I just wanted to make a quick reference in relation to the sports and how our athletes perform, and just to say that we did not match the 12 medals won at the championships in Doha in 2019, 12. But it was good enough for Jamaica to be placed in the overall medal count of 10 medals at, right. So in fact, we got 2 gold, 7 silver, and 1 bronze. And we placed second on the medal count, on the points count, right? And third on the medal count. And so we did extremely well. I just want to say that we have with us an Olympian, Juliet Cuthbert, and I want you to make her feel special, because she's among a special group of women. Athletes, yes, but in this particular case, our women have made us extremely proud. And I just want to use the opportunity to specially big them up and to say that our athletes have always put Jamaica center stage. And for this, we are eternally grateful to them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, there remains very little more to be said. Having heard the Minister of Sports and also the opposition spokesman on finance referencing the powerful performance of our Jamaican athletes in Oregon and also relating to the festivities that will attend our Diamond Jubilee within a few days. Madam Speaker, it has been a strong session. I think in the last 24 weeks, we've had this Honourable House meeting at least once a week, and in instances twice a week when we covered the sectoral debates. We've dealt with a number, some 45 sessional committee meetings and joint select committee meetings over the period. We've done as many as 23 pieces of resolutions, legislations, and or bills that came to the House as a combination. In the period, Madam Speaker, we've also had the good fortune of having a number of heads of state and government attending this honourable chamber, and having two joint sitting of the House, and expecting to have another, which I will speak about in a second or so. Madam Speaker, it is not really intended to complete my full report on this session today, because there is another session to come, which I will mention. But permit me, because this next session to come will be punctuated by the observation of our emancipendence, although we will have an opportunity on the independent side of the emancipendence. But certainly we will not be around for the celebrations of the 1st of August, as is always Emancipation Day, the observation. So I would love to use the opportunity to wish members a very, very productive day as we reflect on the history and tradition and the heritage of our great country, and indeed the passage that brought us into this world, and that first mega migration pattern, which we have, varied accounts of and feel somehow mixed about, because it has been painful and difficult and dehumanizing in part, but it has created today a free people with power, with strength, with ability, with perspicacity, with the kind of strength of character that is moving the world and changing things and innovating and creating new vistas. So out of that evil moment of that passage called the Middle Passage emerge a strong people in the new world. And so we pause to reflect on that on the first day of August. An opportunity will be provided on the 5th of August, when we will again have a joint sitting of this and the Senate chamber in this George William Gordon House. And we will then receive His Excellency, the President of Namibia, and his beautiful bride. So His Excellency Hage Geingob and Mrs. Monica Geingoss. And it's an interesting thing that the German base of the language there allows for the female, her name being the same as her husband, to be pronounced a little differently. So we are excited about welcoming them, and we will have the usual pomp and pageantry that attends it. But then later in the afternoon, Madam Speaker, we will have a very special sitting of the House to receive from the Senate the amendments to the Road Traffic Act, which they are meeting on Friday to do those amendments, and we will have to have a very special sitting of the House to approve those amendments, yes, after the joint sitting. So, Madam Speaker, at that time, there will present another opportunity for us to wish each other on the verge of our Diamond Jubilee a wonderful and pleasant independence celebration. And at that point, we will speak about the recess and the extent of when we should be back in this chamber. So, Madam Speaker, there is not intended to contract any further business for the day. I invite you then to adjourn the House until Friday, August 5th at 3:30 p.m. at the George William Gordon House.
Thank you, House Leader. May I also use this opportunity as the Speaker to wish for us all as members of Parliament, to the clerk and all the members of the staff, particularly to those who work with us in the chamber, or my Chief of Staff to my left here, Captain, members of the Hansard, all the Hansard writers, the orderlies who are here with us in the chamber, those who do sign language, and indeed the members of the press who are always here with us, and indeed all members of parliamentary staff. We wish for you a time of reflection, even as we celebrate Emancipation Day, and thank you very much for your hard work and your dedication to the job here at Parliament. With that, I want to adjourn the House until August 5th, Friday, August 5th at 3:30, when we have a joint sitting of the House with the Senate and a visiting head of state from one of our African countries. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned. Mm-hmm.